Chapter 1322. Kong Yingda panicked. He was aware of all these things. It was rumored that what happened on the mountain was approved by the emperor and arranged by the crown prince. He even knew about the imperial edict last time. But he always thought that it was the young masters who fooled the emperor and that the emperor should be displeased with it. Besides, there was nothing on the mountain that was taught by sage Confucius. Kong Yingda hastily withdrew a book from his pocket, and then he knelt down and said, "Your Majesty, this is what I obtained from White Deer Academy. It's something called a textbook that they teach, and practically every single one of the 3,000+ students on the mountain has one. Please have a look, Your Majesty." Li Shimin didn't even look at the booklet. Kong Yingda panicked and said, "There are many things in this textbook that go against the teachings of sage Confucius. In particular, there is a sentence in it that says the emperor is as guilty as the common people if he violates the law. This is an affront to the emperor's grace. Besides, he is a viscount and the head chancellor of the two academies. But he dared not to attend such an important event as the autumn planting ceremony. This is contempt for the emperor's power. Your Majesty. Your Majesty, think about it. In today's world, who can let a broken bone stand on the street? Besides, there is also the blood-exchanging technique. This is simply witchcraft. Your Majesty, enough. Kong Yingda, are you still so stubborn?" Fang Xianling was so angry that his whole body was trembling. "How can you be so blind to such an obvious thing? Can't you see it clearly? Does it even need to be said? How can you be so foolish at this critical moment?" Fang Xianling could roughly guess the emperor's intention at this time. He also knew about the invisible black hand that shrouded the Tang dynasty at this time. But how could he know that the emperor would jump out at this critical moment? After all, he had some interactions with Kong Yingda in the past, so he couldn't bear to do it. But at this time, seeing that Kong Yingda didn't know what was good for him, Fang Xianling couldn't help but get angry. This was clearly the instruction of the Shandong nobles. Otherwise, no one would say anything about him. But today, what was going on? How dare he be so bold? Could it be? What did Yu Qigong do in Fengzi's mansion yesterday that this old man saw? Fang Xianling couldn't help but glance at Yu Qigong, but when he saw that Yu Qigong's expression remained unchanged, he frowned slightly. Seeing this, Li Shimin shook his head and said, "After all, what Confucius said is for the sake of the Tang dynasty. This is understandable. But let me ask you, do you have any evidence?" "Yes." When Kong Yingda heard this, he immediately said, "As long as the emperor lets Niu Jianhu, imperial doctor Zhou, and the imperial doctors examine Niu Jianhu's legs in court, everything will be clear at a glance." "Good." Li Shimin nodded and asked again, "Minister Kong, have you thought it through?" Kong Yingda represented the Shandong nobles. Li Shimin didn't want to drag the Shandong nobles to the opposite side so quickly, so he warned him. However, Kong Yingda seemed to have gone crazy at this time. He said with certainty, "I have thought it through." When Li Shimin heard this, he sighed and said, "Since that's the case, summon Imperial Dr. Zhou and the Imperial Doctors of the Imperial Hospital to the palace. Summon Niu Jianhu to the palace. Today I'll let you have a look. This time." Even Li Shimin couldn't save Kong Yingda. Fang Xianling couldn't bear it. He sighed heavily and said nothing. After all, he asked for it. After a while, Zhou Hongru led a group of imperial doctors of the Imperial Hospital to the palace in a hurry. They knew about this on their way here. At this time, when they went to the political announcement hall, everyone looked at Kong Yingda with a bad expression. However, Kong Yingda didn't care about this. He narrowed his eyes and pretended that nothing had happened. Li Shimin didn't say a word. At this time, the political announcement hall was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. The oppressive atmosphere brewing in the hall made many ministers unable to help but have a layer of fine cold sweat on their foreheads. In this torturous wait, Niu Jianhu appeared at the door of the political announcement hall with a crutch. Niu Jianhu greets the emperor. Until this voice appeared. Li Shimin slowly opened his eyes and waved his hand indifferently, "Give him a seat." "Minister Kong, how are you going to examine it?" When Kong Yingda heard this, he said, replying to the emperor, "You just need to take off these white cloths and it will be revealed to the world." "Good." Li Shimin waved his hand, "Imperial Dr. Zhou, take it off." "Wait." Kong Yingda hurriedly interrupted Li Shimin's words and said again, in order to prevent them from acting, this old minister thought. Li Shimin waved his hand impatiently, "Then I'll let you take it off personally, how about it?" How could Kong Yingda do this? Looking around, he pointed at one of the backup imperial physicians who belonged to the Kong family and said, "Let him do it." Li Shimin didn't want to look at Kong Yingda. He waved his hand and the imperial doctor of the Kong family hurried to Niu Jianhu's side. He habitually took out a mask from his arms and put it on his mouth. This time, Kang Yingda's expression instantly turned cold. Unfilial son, who let you wear this thing? Take it off for old man. Chapter 1323. The imperial doctor of the Kang family did not expect Kang Yingda to say this. He glanced at the emperor and saw that the emperor closed his eyes and ignored this matter. Moreover, he was an imperial doctor, so he knew something about it. He quickly whispered, Kang Darren, this thing is a mask. It can effectively infect the textile virus. Infect what? This is just a leg injury. How can it be contagious? Give it to old man. Cough cough, Kang Darren, aren't you too meddlesome? This is the rule of my imperial hospital. Old man thought, you are not allowed to intervene in my imperial hospital's affairs, right? Could it be that you, Kang Darren, want to replace me? Enough, remove it for me. Li Shimon's cold voice made Kang Yingda behave. However, the imperial doctor was extremely aggrieved. He looked at the angry Kang Yingda in front of him and said, Kang Darren, you can ask around. Now all the imperial doctors in Chang and city are using this thing. While speaking, the imperial doctor did not say anything. He quickly began to remove the bandage on Niu Jianhu's right leg. The bandage was very particular about the removal method. However, since Imperial Doctor Zhou saw Zhang Feng's magical method, he practiced with this thing every day after returning to the Imperial Hospital. Over time, the people in the Imperial Hospital knew about Zhang Feng's treatment of Niu Jianhu. They also knew about this operation. Everyone was curious about this bandage. There were so many ways to wrap it. At this time, the young Imperial Doctor simply could not do anything to the bandage that was wrapped around Niu Jianhu's leg like a fish scale. However, under everyone's surprised eyes, the young Imperial Doctor skillfully pulled out a needle from the side and gently and quickly removed the bandage. This time, all the ministers were curious. After all, this was the first time they saw this thing. It took a lot of time to wrap the bandage. Niu Jianhu was also a little angry at this time. He also cooperated with that person's actions. After about a meal, the bandage was finally removed. In an instant, the dense bamboo clips and brand new bamboo clips appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The bamboo clips were boiled in water and the stubble was still brand new. At this time, Kang Yingda was even more certain of his idea. It was obvious that it was just done. At this moment, the officials looked at Niu Jianhu and Niu Jinda in confusion. They were not fools. Naturally, they could tell that it seemed to have been put up last night. Besides, didn't Kang Yingda just say that Niu Jianhu and Niu Jianhu went to Fang Xuanling's mansion in the end? Could it be that they had created this in Fang Xuanling's mansion? This was a great crime of deceiving the emperor. But when everyone looked at the emperor, they found that the emperor's expression remained unchanged. What was the meaning of this? At this time, the young imperial doctor glanced at Kang Yingda. After all, Kang Yingda was his elder. Although he was an elder, he was also from a side branch. However, because of Kang Yingda's status in the court, his status in the family had also risen. Moreover, he was able to come to the imperial hospital because of his relationship with Kang Yingda. However, Kang Yingda glanced at him coldly. It was this glance that made the young imperial doctor somewhat unable to bear it. But at this time the emperor was also present. If he went too far, he would be dragged into the water. He could only endure it and dismantle the bamboo clips. Fang Xianling originally wanted to remind him, but at this time, seeing Kang Yingda's appearance, he couldn't help but be a little angry. Dear Minister Kang, are you sure you want to continue? At this time, Li Shimin reminded him again. Last night, Zhen, Imperial Dr. Zhou and the others personally saw Jinhu's leg. Are you sure you want to continue? Li Shimin also couldn't bear it. But at this time, when Kang Yingda saw such a temporary bamboo clip in the white cloth strip, he really wanted to expose it immediately. How could he give up? He cupped his fist and said, Emperor, this official understands. When Li Shimin heard this, he sighed and said, Fine. In that case, let's dismantle it. There were 3 layers of bamboo clips. Each layer was separated by a layer of gauze, but after the first layer of bamboo clips was dismantled, traces of blood suddenly appeared on the leg. And there was a strong smell mixed in the blood. Of course, this group of people couldn't bear the smell of alcohol, they just thought it was white wine. Kang Yingda's eyes lit up as if he saw the hope of victory. At this time, all the officials in the field were frightened. This is... Without waiting for the crowd to say anything, Imperial Dr. Zhou frowned slightly. It seemed that he disliked the young imperial doctor's slow hands and feet. Niu Jinhu also hurriedly went to the field and quickly tore off the things on his leg. After the last layer of gauze was taken off, a 3-feet-long scar on Niu Jinhu's leg and a leg that was still swollen suddenly appeared in front of everyone. At this time, without waiting for Kang Yingda to speak, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "All the imperial doctors, personally check Niu Jinhu's leg and see if it was broken. If anyone dares to lie, Zhen will not forgive them." This time, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Was His Majesty really angry? At this time, even Kang Yingda had belatedly discovered the problem. But it was already too late. By the time he reacted, how could all the imperial doctors dare to disobey the emperor's decree? And it was obvious that the emperor knew about this matter. At this time, which one of the people who could get into the imperial hospital wasn't a wily old fox? Which one of them didn't have good eyesight? At this time, who didn't know the emperor's meaning? The emperor's meaning was very clear. Learn to be smart. If you dare to mess around, be careful of your head. Chapter 1324. Your Majesty, Niu Jinhu's leg does have signs of fracture. I'm good at grinding bones. There are obvious signs of fracture 3 inches above the belly of Niu Jinhu's right leg. Everyone present can feel it. Your Majesty, it's indeed so. We all feel it. Your Majesty, look. The silver needles can easily penetrate the bone. It's impossible that there are no cracks. At this moment, an old imperial physician couldn't wait to hold Niu Jinhu up. He raised Niu Jinhu's right leg high and pointed at the 3 silver needles on it. As he spoke, he pulled the 3 silver needles back and forth in Niu Jinhu's grimacing mouth. Then he changed the direction of the needles, sticking them in and pulling them out. Niu Jinhu was in so much pain that he almost fainted. Seeing this, at this moment, there was no need for anyone to say anything. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Okay, bandage him." "Dear Minister Kang, do you still think that his broken leg is fake? If you still think his leg is fake, do you want me to break your leg now and let Zhang Feng fix it for you?" What else could Kang Yingda say at this moment? He had already collapsed on the ground and fell into a daze. He was already in a daze at this moment. He couldn't figure out why. How could a broken leg recover so quickly? If that was the case, didn't it mean that what happened on the mountain? Li Shimin was also a little angry at this moment. He waved his hand and said, "I think dear Minister Kang is not in good health. Men, send him home to recuperate. Without my permission, don't go to the court for the time being. Men, take him away from me." In this way, Kang Yingda was taken away. No one knew who was right and who was wrong. After all, this matter was too unimaginable. Who would have thought that Zhang Feng's medical skills were so amazing that a person with a broken leg could walk with crutches in less than a month? This was simply a fantasy story, alright? But at this moment, it really happened in front of everyone's eyes. Everyone had no choice but to believe that it was true. Most importantly, many of them were very doubtful when they didn't see it in person today. But now, everyone's heart began to burn, as if they had seen something extraordinary. Li Shimin didn't give them too much time to think. After all, he had given them enough time before, and today's morning court had been long enough. Li Shimin said lightly, "You all saw what happened today, right? As for the mask, I believe that as long as you have been to Chang, and you should be able to see it. Even I am using it now." What Minister Kang said earlier about General Niu going to look for an iron mine is something that General Niu is doing for the common people. However, as for the matter of him being poisoned, Niu Jijia, you should say it yourself. Hearing this, Niu Jinda bowed and said, "Your Majesty, I saw that the autumn planting season was coming, and the people in Chang, and were seriously lacking in ironware and other farming tools. Therefore I wanted to share your burden and went there. But I didn't expect that I didn't know the iron mine. By chance I got a mysterious thing and got poisoned?" After Yu Qigong recounted everything in detail, Li Shimin said, "However, I know that this thing of yours, is it something that the boy named Zhang Feng on the mountain came up with?" Li Shimin didn't want to draw Zhang Feng out. But at this time the situation was not optimistic. The autumn planting couldn't be delayed any longer. And if the phosphorus fertilizer and seeds were delayed, how could it be promoted? Therefore today, Li Shimin had already pushed everything to Zhang Sun Wuji as well as that old Li. He, on the other hand, had removed himself completely. After all, although he didn't want to hide his identity, it wouldn't be good if he exposed Fengzi like this. However, this matter must be spread out. Thinking of this, Li Shimin said, "Yesterday I also went to Minister Fang's mansion. And it was because of this. Minister Zhang Sun and the others, in order to solve the food shortage problem, actually used some unknown method to create something called fertilizer. Of course, I heard that this thing was also created by Zhang Feng, right? How could Zhang Sun Wuji not know the emperor's meaning?" He hurriedly replied, "Replying to your Majesty, it is indeed like this. This matter was told to this lowly official by a merchant surnamed Li. I heard that this brat named Zhang Feng has developed a fertilizer that can double the yield of all the fields. Moreover, I've carefully investigated White Deer Academy, and I've indeed discovered that one of the textbooks in the academy is something called physics. So, I've made a bold decision and tacitly agreed to this research. Li Shimin heard this. He nodded and said, Minister Zhang Sun has done well. This is a great merit that will last for 1,000 years. Minister, think about it. What do you need? I will reward you one by one. Reward? They wanted fields. But would the emperor give them? And most importantly, they wanted food. But the national treasury was even poorer than them. What did they want? Money? Forget it. They had a lot of that stuff too. Zhang Sun Wuji pretended to be righteous and selfless as he said, to be able to share your majesty's burdens is this subject's duty. How would I dare to ask for any reward? Li Shimin heard this and nodded with a smile. Since that is the case, when this thing is really created, I will reward you all together. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, give the order to reward Chancellor Zhang Feng of White Deer College with 100 mu of fertile land. Chapter 1325. Today's morning court session lasted for 6 hours. By the time the court session ended, everyone was already dizzy from hunger. However, the court session this time caused ripples in the hearts of all the officials, especially after they learned that Zhang Sun Wuji had mentioned that Mr. Li had a close personal relationship with Zhang Sun Wuji. Moreover, the emperor really knew about Zhang Feng's matter. This was what shocked all the officials the most. Previously, they had vaguely heard from the imperial astronomer that the North Star had descended in Chang and city. Moreover, they were all officials in the court. How could they not know about the matter in a small place like Chang and city? Especially after the barbecue and beer were served, everyone heard a name. Zhang Feng. Previously they had only vaguely guessed this. However, now that the emperor had vaguely mentioned it, and Zhang Sun Wuji had said it in the court session today, everyone was enlightened. Everyone was instantly enlightened. This man was none other than Zhang Feng. No wonder the emperor valued White Deer College so much. This was the real North Star descending. And this time, the most important thing that could benefit all of them was not the white paper, nor the braised meat, nor the new dishes, but the miraculous knowledge of White Deer Academy that Zhang Feng had created, as well as the miraculous medical skills that they had now. Furthermore, there was the land that the emperor had bestowed upon them previously, which had caused them so much pain. Today, if it weren't for that damned Kongingda, the emperor would probably have taken back some of their land without them knowing. However, Kongingda was a good person. He had helped everyone. As for himself, he was willing to be driven back by the furious emperor. No one would feel comfortable if this happened to him. After all, this was the emperor's private matter. The emperor was also a human and wanted to have some private property. Moreover, the emperor had originally wanted to take back some land from everyone. However, with Kongingda's interference, everything was ruined. It would be strange if the emperor wasn't furious. Therefore, the emperor decided to tell him about it directly. At this time, everyone was so excited, but the emperor had also given a strict order. If anyone dared to wantonly hoard land, all of their land and property would be confiscated. Although this only started after today's morning court session. Anyone could see that the emperor was favoring Zhang Sun Wuji and Fang Xianling, but what could they do? After all, he was a duke and had put in a lot of effort into this matter. If it weren't for them, they would still be worrying about the land in their hands. At this moment, all the officials were happily returning home to digest the good news. In the imperial study, Yu Qigong and the others were in trouble. Especially Yu Qigong. They watched the emperor slowly eat and drink. They were so hungry that they swallowed their saliva, but what could they say? He didn't even dare to fart. They all knew what the emperor was feeling at this time. They also knew why they were here. Let alone speaking now, anyone who farted first would be the target of the emperor's wrath. The emperor was waiting for this. Although everyone knew at this time, these officials knew the emperor's mentality very well. How could they not know what the emperor was thinking? However, Li Shimin had deliberately made noise and slowed down the speed of eating, but they still didn't speak. He couldn't help but sigh slightly when he saw that. Niu Jijia. Niu Jinda knew that he couldn't avoid it, so he hurriedly stepped forward and said, I'm here. I can't figure out why you went to Fengzi's mansion yesterday. As far as I know, there was no one else in Fengzi's mansion except for a group of guards. Come on, tell me. If you can't, don't go back today. Hearing this, Niu Jinda's forehead was instantly covered with a layer of fine cold sweat. Fang Xianling and the others glanced at Niu Jinda curiously and didn't say anything. It wasn't that they didn't want to say it, but they didn't dare to. This was also the reason why they were confused. After all, it was reasonable to say that there was a problem with this matter. You clearly knew that Zhang Feng was on the mountain, and with your means, you should have known that we were here. But you didn't go anywhere, but directly broke into Zhang Feng's mansion. It was impossible not to be suspicious. And the most infuriating thing was, you mother****, you even let Kongingda grab hold of your weakness. Why did you bring your stupid son out for a stroll when you had nothing better to do? Did you not feel comfortable lying at home? Now you feel better, right? Niu Jinda regretted it very much. But now that it had happened, it was nonsense to say anything else. He could only say helplessly, Your Majesty, I'm innocent. Li Shimin was so angry that he almost laughed. At this time you still want to play dumb? It's because of you, old bastard, that my plan is all ruined. Li Shimin chuckled coldly and said, Then tell Zhen, where exactly are you being wrongly accused? If you can't give me a reason, then I really want to hear a few sounds in As Imperial Study today. Chapter 1326. In an instant, Niu Jinda couldn't stay calm. What was he doing? Hearing a sound? Swish. Niu Jinda hurriedly knelt down and said, Your Majesty, yesterday this old subject originally wanted to take my son to thank Fengzi, but after thinking for a long time, I couldn't think of what to give to Fengzi. However, when I turned my head, I saw the Guangong too that your Majesty rewarded me, so this old subject. Niu Jinda spilled the whole story of how he went to Zhang Feng's residence yesterday as well as why he went there and what he did there. The sound really scared him. After all, being hit by a plank was also a sound. The head falling to the ground was also a sound. He couldn't tell what the emperor was thinking, and this time the emperor was really angry. What's more, Kongingda, this old guy, basically exposed everything. No one would feel good if this happened to him. At this time he didn't know whether the emperor was really angry or something else. This was what scared him the most. At this time, Li Shimin heard this and said with some surprise, You mean you extorted the Guangong too that you have been hanging at the gate? Yes, that's right. This is a life-saving grace. Moreover, it saved both our lives. But this old minister can't think of what to give. Money? That's too cliché. You can say that it's something else. There's nothing that Fengzi would like. So I thought about it and gave it to Fengzi. After all, Fengzi is a good brother, and this painting is suitable for him. Li Shimin was a little dizzy. He was thinking about taking advantage of this opportunity to get the Guangong to back. Now it was in Fengzi's pocket. It was completely impossible to get it back now. He could only sigh and say, Fine, fine. You gave it to him, but why did you give him this thing? And the most important thing is, why did you go to his mansion? You didn't really go there to give this painting to Fengzi, did you? Fang Xianling and others were a little bolder at this time. Seeing the emperor's tone soften a little, they plucked up the courage to look at Niu Jinda with doubts. Hearing this, Niu Jinda couldn't calm down and said proudly, Your Majesty knows me best. Yesterday I was thinking about it. Fengzi has been doing this phosphate fertilizer for a long time. Think about it, every time we went to Fengzi's liquor store, he would be so stingy. He said that he didn't have it, but every time he would be able to get some out. What does this mean? It means that Fengzi is too stingy. He hid all the good stuff at home. And I was thinking this guy should have made Fengzi long ago. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to tell Master Fang about it, and wouldn't have dared to use it on the fields in the mountains. And he did it in front of so many people. Li Shimin pondered and felt that Niu Jinda was right. After all, this matter was indeed such a matter. If Zhang Feng wasn't certain of something, he wouldn't do it. Li Shimin couldn't help but walk up and down in the imperial study with his hands behind his back. After a while, he waved his hand and said, Don't just stand there. Sit down. Shaogizi, prepare the meal. Dear Niu, tell me in detail. Did you find anything in Fengzi's mansion? Yes. Niu Jinda's eyes were fixed on the bowl of steaming hot noodles that a group of palace maids brought in. Li Shimin sighed and waved his hand, saying, Let's eat and talk. Oh. When Niu Jinda heard this, he rubbed his hands together and took a large bowl of noodles from a palace maid before wolfing it down. Yu Qigong and the others had long since fainted from hunger. When they saw this, they didn't wait for the emperor's orders and picked up their bowls to slurp down the noodles. After a while, Niu Jinda touched his belly. He wanted to eat another bowl, but seeing Li Shimin's expression, he hurriedly said, Your Majesty, you also know about this. It's Fengzi's east courtyard. Among them, we have been to the southwest and north courtyards, but the east courtyard is the only one that no one is allowed to take a look at. And most importantly, when I went to ask, no one was allowed to mention it. Zhang Feng even found 3 old men and directly sealed the east courtyard. I don't know what they are doing inside. Even when I went to persuade them, in the end, when I mistakenly said that Fengzi was selling phosphate fertilizer on the mountain, they finally allowed me to go in. What's inside? Li Shimin frowned and asked. Fang Xianling and the others also put down their bowls and chopsticks, waiting for Niu Jinda. Niu Jinda looked behind him and saw that the door of the imperial study was closed. He then said mysteriously, the layout of the courtyard is the same as the other places. When Fengzi moved in, we all went to the east courtyard. There are so many rooms, but the three old men didn't live in them. Instead, they built a few thatched sheds in the innermost part of the east courtyard where the sunlight is the best. The weirdest thing is that there's a big pot beside the shed which is boiling water. There's also a big wooden trough beside the pot, and there's something similar to medicinal herbs in the wooden trough. Li Shimin was confused. You said a lot of things. You didn't find anything. You're making fun of me, aren't you? Li Shimin was angry. He waved his hand and said, come on, drag him out and give him 30 beatings. Niu Jinda was still talking vividly. When he heard the emperor's words, he couldn't understand and was a little confused. But when he saw that the Jinwu guards really stopped him, he hurriedly shouted, Your Majesty, I'm innocent. Chapter 1327. Niu Jinda was really beaten up. He wailed again and again. Zhang Sun Wuji and the others heard the noise outside the door and looked at the emperor's gloomy face. They didn't know what to do. They wanted to leave, but the emperor wouldn't let them. They didn't want to leave, but they felt scared to stay here. If the emperor was unhappy, they wouldn't be able to bear 30 beatings. After a while, Niu Jinda was dragged in like a dead fish. As soon as he was thrown on the ground, Li Shimin asked, You tell me. If you don't give me an explanation, you can't leave today. Li Shimin was really angry. Today he was originally thinking about how to take back some real estate from the hands of these ministers. He even thought about exchanging his own white paper and the right to sell fine salt for it. But in the end, Kang Yingda caught Niu Jinda's weakness, which made his plan fail. He almost exposed Zhang Feng. Fortunately, Zhang Sun Wuji was quick-witted and avoided a disaster. This was all because of Niu Jinda, that bastard. How could Li Shimin not be angry? If Niu Jinda didn't explain it clearly and didn't give Li Shimin a chance to vent his anger, Li Shimin really wanted to beat him up this time. After all, he needed a way out of this matter. Niu Jinda was already scared at this time. He hurriedly said, Your Majesty, take a look at this old official's thing first, and then I'll explain it to you. While speaking, Niu Jinda stood up shakily, took out the potato leaf from his arms, and handed it to Li Shimin with both hands. Li Shimin wanted to be angry at first. But after seeing the potato leaf, he frowned slightly. He had seen a lot of precious things in the imperial garden, and most of the things in Zhang Feng's courtyard had been through his hands. How could he not know these things? But at this time, the thing in Niu Jinda's hand surprised Li Shimin. This is the thing that the three old men were secretly fiddling with? Right. Niu Jinda hurriedly said, Your Majesty, those three old men, one was guarding the door, and the other two were squatting beside the wooden trough. When this old official went there, these two old men desperately tried to block this thing. This old official also spent a lot of effort to get this thing, and most importantly, this thing was watered with phosphate fertilizer. That's it? Zhang Feng, that bastard. Did he experiment with phosphate fertilizer on this thing? This thing doesn't look like anything. But before Li Shimin could finish speaking, the part of the potato that he was holding broke right in front of his eyes. Moreover, a drop of juice even shot out and landed on the back of his hand. Li Shimin pinched the stem of the potato with even more astonishment. In that instant, that delicate and fragile feeling made him feel curious. What is this? Li Shimin became even more curious. But before he could speak, Yu Qigong couldn't help but ask. After seeing Li Shimin's eyes, Yu Qigong quickly shut up. Niu Jinda then said, Actually, this old official asked for a long time, but I didn't know what this thing was. In the end, this old official used some means to find out that this thing is actually a medicinal ingredient, and I heard that Fengzi inadvertently obtained it from a merchant in the western region. If you don't believe me, you can try it. This old official has tasted the missing part of this leaf, and it does indeed have the taste of medicinal ingredients. When Li Shimin heard this, he wanted to try it, but was hurriedly stopped by Xiao Gizi. Li Shimin sighed and said, Fine, you can try it. If it's really as Niu Jijie said, call the imperial physician over. Xiao Gizi carefully tore off a piece of potato leaf and put it in his mouth. He chewed and said under Li Shimin's expectant gaze, Your Majesty, this really is a medicinal ingredient. It tastes bitter and a bit numb, and there's also a strange taste. Call the imperial physician. A moment later, Imperial physician Zhou hurriedly entered the imperial study. After asking in detail, he also tore off a piece and threw it into his mouth. At this time, Li Shimin asked, Niu Jijie, is this the medicinal ingredient that Fengzi used to treat the tiger? No. Niu Jinda was also a tactful person. At this time, when he saw the emperor ask, he hurriedly said, Fengzi has no other medicine other than alcohol and bone soup. Li Shimin couldn't help but be even more confused and asked, Imperial Physician Zhou, what do you think this thing is? Where has Imperial Physician Zhou seen this before? At this time he was also very tangled. After hesitating for a long time he couldn't say anything. Seeing this, Li Shimin sighed and said, forget it. I'll ask that kid later. You can leave now. After dismissing Imperial Physician Zhou, Li Shimin once again laid bricks in the Imperial study. Just when everyone was about to doze off, Li Shimin said, that is to say, this phosphate fertilizer really has a magical effect? If this is the case, then my Tang dynasty will prosper. Although they didn't know what this thing was, it was worth it for Zhang Feng to be so mysterious. It must be known that the things that Zhang Feng fiddled with before had never been hidden. At this time, Fengzi must be doing something big. If this thing could be said now with his character, how could he hold it back? If he didn't say it now and it was so mysterious, it meant that this thing was enough to shock the world. Thinking of this, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, this matter can't be mentioned again and can't be discussed in private, understand? The few of them were not noobs. Seeing Li Shimin so cautious, they also knew some things. Several people hurriedly stepped forward and bowed, we obey your majesty's order. Chapter 1328. At the same time, in the virtuous square in the west city of Chang and City, it was in a state of shock. As the saying goes, some people are happy while others are sad. At this moment, everyone in the virtuous square saw Kang Yingda being sent back to the Kang residence by the imperial guards. Kang Yingda was no longer as elegant and arrogant as before. Instead, he was like a foolish old man who was at the mercy of the imperial guards. After the imperial guards left, a group of soldiers wearing the uniform of the imperial guards came to the entrance of the Kang residence. They seemed to be guarding the entrance, but in fact they were watching over the entire Kang residence. Every person who entered and left had to go through layers of checks. At this moment, the entire virtuous square was in shock. Some people said that today at the morning court, Kang Yingda angered the emperor and was removed from his official position by the emperor. Others said that Kang Yingda was plotted against by a scoundrel and the emperor sent people to protect Kang Yingda. As the saying goes, good news never leaves the house, but bad news travels 1,000 miles. In less than 2 hours, Kang Yingda's incident had spread throughout Chang'an. It had even become a household name. But no one in the Kang residence came out to say anything. Even the servants and maids who came out to buy groceries came and went in a hurry. The officials who had always been on good terms with Kang Yingda, as well as the ministers who lived in the virtuous square, did not say a word about this matter. Even the Kang residence, which used to be as busy as a marketplace, was deserted. Everyone who passed by hurriedly ran away, fearing that they would not be able to avoid the place. The Kang residence instantly fell into a gloomy fog. The Kang residence was not the largest or the most gorgeous in the virtuous square, but it was the most exquisite and the most famous. This was because Kang Yingda was known as the son of sage Confucius. But now, the son of sage Confucius was lying on the bed with a sallow face. His eyes and mouth were wide open, and he did not listen to anything anyone said. It seemed that he had really lost his mind. Kang Yingda's so-called 100 students were only a few dozen people at this time. They were kneeling in front of Kang Yingda's bed with the family members of the Kang residence. Beside the bed, an old woman with a head full of white hair was holding a walking stick. While wiping Kang Yingda's cheeks with a rag, she was narrating the situation outside. A moment later, the young imperial physician surnamed Kang from the Imperial Institute of Medicine hurried over. As soon as everyone saw him, it was as if they had seen their savior, and they hurriedly went forward to ask. The old woman who was sitting by the bed slammed her walking stick on the ground and said, Kang Chao, kneel down for me. In an instant the entire room fell silent again. When the imperial physician heard this, he helplessly put down his medicine box and respectfully knelt beside the old woman. He kowtowed and said, Nephew Kang Chao pays his respects to the old woman. This old one asks you what's the matter with master. The old woman was naturally the matriarch of the entire Kang family, and was also Kang Yingda's official wife. Kang Chao opened his mouth to say something, but when he thought of what Kang Yingda had done, and the fact that the emperor had not really dismissed Kang Yingda today, he said, Matriarch, Lord Kang was just provoked in the court today. It's nothing serious. The emperor did not say that he was going to dismiss Lord Kang. It's just that Lord Kang took some things too hard and got angry. In the end, Kang Chao could only compromise and say it out loud. After all, if he really said it, it would cause a lot of trouble. Once the news spread and the emperor found out that he was the one who spread it, it would be hard to say if he could even keep his head, let alone keep his current position. Seeing that they did not speak, Kong Chao sighed helplessly and went forward to take Kong Ingda's pulse, give him acupuncture, and even patted Kong Ingda's body to check. Kong Ingda's expression slowly returned to his senses. Kong Chao glanced at everyone. He didn't want to say anything, but this was the Kong family after all. Half of the reason why he could be in such a high position was because of Kong Ingda. Today, Kong Chao knew that the reason why Kong Ingda asked him to come out and check Niu Jinhu's leg was to create an opportunity for him. He wasn't an ungrateful person. However, there were some things that he really could not say at that time. At this moment, Kong Chao shook his head and said, "Matriarch, it's best if you don't go out and walk around as much as possible during this period. Also, tell the people in the residence not to say anything. If it reaches the Emperor's ears, then I really can't say anything more. I hope that Matriarch can understand my difficulties. This is the prescription, you just need to follow this prescription. Get out of here for old man. Guards, from today onwards, beat old man to death if anyone in the Kong residence sees this person." At this moment, Kong Ingda had already regained consciousness, but his voice was not as loud as before. It was as if something was stuck in his throat, and when he spoke it would be gurgling. It sounded extremely uncomfortable. However, the fact that he could wake up made everyone heave a sigh of relief. Seeing this, Kong Chao hurriedly knelt and said, "Lord Kong, there were many things that I could not say in the hall at that time. I hope, get out of here for old man. Guards, beat him out of here." How could Kong Ingda listen at this time? He was panting heavily. Seeing this, the old woman hurriedly hugged Kong Ingda and patted him on the back, scolding, "Why aren't you leaving? Are you trying to anger your master to death?" Kong Chao had no choice but to sigh helplessly. The Emperor did not dismiss Lord Kong. He only asked Lord Kong to rest at home. After a while, the Emperor will issue a decree for Lord Kong to return to court. However, Kong Chao could only sigh helplessly amidst the violent panting. "Sigh. I will take my leave." Chapter 1329. The Emperor would definitely issue an edict in the future. What did this mean? This meant that even if he, Kong Ingda, could return to the imperial court, he would only be treated as heir. This was something he did not want to see. Niu Jinda. Old man and you are irreconcilable. In the end, Kong Ingda vented all his anger on Niu Jinda. If he had not suddenly brought his son out for a stroll and happened to be seen by him, how could such a big mistake have occurred? No. Kong Ingda suddenly thought of an extremely terrifying thing. That was, why did Niu Jinda go out yesterday? And why did he let him see him? Why did no one else see him? Why was this? Could it be the Emperor had wanted to get rid of him for a long time? At this thought, Kong Ingda could not help but tremble all over. Everyone was frightened by his excitement. Old Lady Kong hurriedly called for the estate's physician to massage Kong Ingda's philtrum and massage his tendons. After a long while, Kong Ingda finally calmed down. Looking at the room full of crying people, Kong Ingda angrily waved his hand and said, "Old man is not dead yet, and you are all crying at his funeral? Get out of here for old man." Seeing this, no one dared to say anything. They hurriedly pushed him out. At this time, Kong Ingda finally asked about everything in the Kong estate. When he found out that there were imperial guards guarding the door, he was so angry that his body trembled all over again. This scared Madame Kong half to death. "Has Niu Jinda returned to the estate?" Madame Kong shook her head. "No, I heard from the people in the estate that Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong, Niu Jinda, Zhang Sun Wuji, Du Ruhui, Fang Xianling, and the others have not left the palace yet." "That's right." Kong Ingda trembled all over as he said, "This is old man, they are performing at the Emperor's place. Otherwise, why haven't they left the palace at this time? Quickly send someone to guard the entrance of the palace for the old man, prepare a sedan. The old man will personally go to that old bastard Niu Jinda's residence to investigate. Old man, the old man has no enmity with you. Why do you want to harm the old man?" Madame Kong naturally knew a little about what happened to Niu Jinda yesterday. Seeing this, she recalled what Kong Chao had said just now and Kong Ingda's crazy words and thought of something. But what he couldn't figure out was, although Kong Ingda usually didn't have much interaction with these people, at least they weren't on opposite sides. Why did he have to do this today? Since Madame Kong was able to become Kong Ingda's first wife, she naturally came from a prestigious family. Furthermore, she had to take care of the endless stream of visitors every day, so she naturally knew some things. If he didn't have some skill, how could he run this huge Kong family so smoothly? But what he couldn't figure out was that this Niu Jinda, as well as all these things, seemed to revolve around an unknown but well-known person in Chang'an, Zhang Feng. At the thought of this, Madame Kong hurriedly comforted him. Master, please don't be impatient. Let me arrange for someone to go to that deserted mountain to take a look. After we figure out the truth of this matter, we'll discuss further, okay? Hearing this, Kong Ingda's eyes instantly burst with a touch of excitement. Madam, you're really the old man's good wife. How come the old man didn't think of this? While speaking, Kong Ingda didn't even put on his clothes. He was about to rush out of the door with his shriveled ribs naked. As he ran, he shouted, "Someone come, prepare a sedan. Quickly prepare a sedan for the old man." Master. Madame Kong was also anxious. She hurriedly pulled him back and said, "Don't worry, take care of your body." At this time there are still imperial guards outside the door. The emperor and everyone else are watching the mansion at this time. If you go out, then our Kong family will really be exterminated. Besides, the emperor is angry at this time. And since that damn Zhang Feng dared to do this at this time, what does it mean? It means that he has already made a plan. Think about it, Master Cui, think about it carefully. In an instant, Kong Ingda was stunned. As the most authoritative person in Shandong, he naturally knew a little about some of the things that happened around the emperor. Previously, the emperor targeted Guanlong, and suddenly seemed to have reached some kind of agreement with Guanlong's people. Then the Wang clan's people suddenly ignited the iron ore supply, and all of these things. At this time, Shandong had already faintly sensed that a pair of invisible big hands were controlling everything. At this time, the emperor was tentatively trying to find that pair of big hands. At this time, Kong Ingda was so excited that he actually understood everything. But he never thought that the emperor and that guy named Zhang Feng's hands would actually touch here. Could it be that he's testing me? When he thought of this, Kong Ingda immediately calmed down. Madame Kong quietly sat on the chair. When she saw this, she breathed a sigh of relief. She quickly lit a cigarette for Kong Ingda and handed it to him. However, when Kong Ingda saw the cigarette, he was no longer as reluctant to part with it as before. Instead, he was extremely disgusted and hid the cigarette away. From now on, in the entire Kong family, everything related to that guy is not allowed to touch, or else you will be punished according to the family rules. Chapter 1330. As the sky slowly darkened, Kong Ingda was still seated in front of his desk, frantically looking through several things. In order to placate the people in the estate, old lady Kong had left Kong Ingda's room early on. In truth, Kong Ingda wasn't looking at anything. Instead, he was looking through all the information his spies had gathered. He even gathered all the small and large matters that had passed through his hands in the last year. Although Kong Ingda couldn't find anything useful, this was precisely what left him perplexed. Because he couldn't find any records on Zhang Feng in the Liang province residence. Although there really was a Zhang clan in Phoenix Ridge, and they had indeed been caught in a landslide and drowned in the Qinling Mountains, no one knew where that Zhang Feng had gone. He had once heard the crown prince mention this Zhang Feng to Ho Junji, and it seemed that someone had brought a portrait of Zhang Feng to the Liang province residence in Phoenix Ridge. Although he could roughly confirm Zhang Feng's identity, there was still one point that was suspicious. How had Zhang Feng managed to escape? Moreover, who was that esteemed teacher of Zhang Feng's? Who had seen him? Who knew his name? Why didn't anyone know about his strange abilities before? And why had no one ever mentioned them in any of the secret and unofficial records? This was especially true for the matter of setting bones, the white paper, the cigarettes, and the fine salt. If such important matters were true, why hadn't there been a single clue? And even if they had come from another region, the Tang Dynasty had been so prosperous, and there had been so many foreign merchants from the Han Dynasty to the present. Why had no one brought these things to the Tang Dynasty? Why did it have to be that brat Zhang Feng? This was the greatest question. Kong Ingda couldn't help but be even more curious about Zhang Feng's identity and why Zhang Feng had chosen to stay in Mount Shao. He felt that this brat had chosen to stay in Mount Shao for some reason, and who was that merchant called Lao Li? Why couldn't he find anything in such a small place like Chang and City? Logically speaking, if he had such a close relationship with Zhang Sun Wuji, there should be some clues. But why couldn't he find anything? Why didn't he collect money? Why did he gather more than 3,000 students on the mountain? What was he trying to do? Moreover, the crown prince and the others were willing to stay on the mountain? What exactly was he plotting? Kong Ingda could not help but break out in a cold sweat as he connected all the incidents together. Then he thought about what he had encountered. Kong Ingda felt that there was a shocking conspiracy going on. After all, if there was no conspiracy, why would everything be so coincidental? Most importantly, Zhang Feng's teaching theory was completely different from the traditional teaching methods of the Shandong landowning households. Could it be that Zhang Feng, that bastard, was targeting him for these things? In addition, if the emperor wants to find the person behind the scenes, does he want to start with me, Kongingda? Are the Shandong landowning households really soft persimmons? It would have been better if he did not think that way. Now that he thought about it, Kongingda instantly felt that something was really wrong. Especially when he encountered such a thing at this time, Kongingda could not help but think of more things. After all, such a thing had happened at this time. At the thought of this, Kongingda really could not sit still anymore. He took a deep breath and looked at the sky that was gradually darkening outside the window. He quietly put on his clothes and went to the door to take a look. When he saw that the manservant was dozing off at the door, he called out softly, "Dumbo Kong, come in and talk." Dumbo Kong was Kongingda's page boy and also the manservant who was dozing off at the door. However, when he heard his master's call, he hurriedly wiped the saliva off his mouth and hurried into the study. "Master, shall I prepare some food for you?" Kongingda waved his hand and said, "There's no need. Quickly go and prepare some clothes for an old farmer and a mule for me." Dumbo Kong was instantly scared half to death and hurriedly said, "Master, what are you?" Kongingda glared at him coldly. "Why are you spouting so much nonsense when I'm asking you to do something? Don't spread this or old man will break your legs." Dumbo Kong was so frightened that he hurriedly scrambled out. After spending the time it took to eat a meal, Kongingda, dressed as an old farmer, mixed in with a group of swill collectors from the back door of Kong residence and left his own residence. Kongingda stared ruefully at the imperial guards at the gates, but his eyes were also filled with boundless rage and indignation. Since when did he have to enter and leave his own house in such humiliation? It was all because of that damn Zhang Feng and that old bastard Niu Jinda. Having reached this point in his train of thought, Kongingda followed the group of people out of the city just as the gates were about to close. As soon as he was out of the moat, the drawbridge over the moat began to rise up into the air. A few commoners looked at the people among them and bowed slightly. "Konggong, why don't we accompany you?" These people had been shuttling through these places all year round and naturally knew who Kongingda was. Moreover, they only dared to take the risk because of Dumbo Kong's instructions. Otherwise, would they have dared to do something like that? It was something that could cost them their lives. After all, they had been illuminated by Kongingda over the years. It was only after Dumbo Kong repeatedly promised that no one else would know about it that they finally agreed. Nonetheless, after all, who was Zhang Feng? They knew better than anyone else. Zhang Feng was their great savior at the moment, and they did not dare to offend him so easily. Moreover, the news of Kongingda offending the emperor was spreading like wildfire in Chang, and today, which made them even more suspicious. Kongingda pulled out a huge stack of banknotes from his chest and gave them to them in every possible way before finally offering a fist-palm salute. "This journey is fraught with danger, so we shall part ways here. Thank you for your trouble, and I hope that you can forget about what happened tonight." The old farmer could not help asking curiously, "Are you really going to Mount E?" Kongingda laughed bitterly. "Yes." Chapter 1331. At this point, everything pointed to White Deer College. If he were to show even the slightest bit of fear at this moment, it would be fatal. Moreover, the Kong family no longer had a chance. Moreover, what choice did he have now? Kongingda glanced at Chang and city under the night sky and walked slowly into the dark Shao Mountain without looking back. At the same time, in the imperial study in Chang'an City, Shao Gizi hurriedly whispered into Li Shimin's ear, who was bent over the table and reading memorials, "Your Majesty, a spy just reported that Lord Kong has left Chang'an City." Li Shimin frowned slightly. "Do you know why he left?" Li Shimin did not expect Kongingda to leave Chang'an at this time. Originally, Li Shimin did not think that Kongingda would leave Chang'an. Originally, Li Shimin did not care about Kongingda's past friendship and the face of the Shandong aristocrats. As long as he was well, Li Shimin would not care about anything. After all, to put it bluntly, these things were nothing. He just noticed Niu Jinda's abnormality. If Li Shimin didn't know the original story, he would also be suspicious. After all, Zhang Feng's means were really unprecedented. But leaving Chang, and at this time, Li Shimin couldn't help but lose interest in continuing to review the memorials. Li Shimin waved his sleeve and said, "Do you know why Kongingda left Chang and this time?" Shao Gizi bowed and said, "Your Majesty, I just received a letter from the spy saying that Lord Kong disguised himself as a commoner and followed a group of people who carried swill out of the city on a mule. He probably didn't leave the city this time to go back to Shandong. And I also heard that today Imperial physician Kong Chao secretly went to diagnose Lord Kong's injury. It seemed that he was scolded out by Lord Kong. And Lord Kong has been scolding Niu Jijie in bed." Li Shimin lit a cigarette, but when the cigarette was half lit, his face suddenly changed. He thought of a bad result. Could it be that this old guy wanted to go up the mountain in the dark? Thinking of this, Li Shimin became more and more flustered. Was this old guy so stubborn? You can't even figure out such a trivial matter? He also knew that Zhang Feng had too many secrets. If it weren't for Kang Yingda, Li Shimin really didn't want to expose Zhang Feng's matters so quickly, but this was also the limit. What he was worried about was that once he revealed his identity, all of the civil and military officials in the court would instantly point their spears at Zhang Feng. Moreover, the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, as well as the Shandong side and that huge hand behind them that had yet to appear, were all added together. When Li Shimin thought of this, he instantly thought of a very frightening thing. What if the phosphate fertilizer issue was a small matter? If it was exposed, so be it. If this kid didn't know how to keep his mouth shut, then, if Kang Yingda were to ask something, the consequences would be unimaginable. Now Li Shimin had been using the identity of Lao Li to cover up the matter of selecting seeds and increasing the phosphate fertilizer. Moreover, he was also thinking of finding a person who looked similar to him after putting on makeup to replace his Chun's eye. However, this was only one of his previous plans. At this time, if Kang Yingda had other purposes and directly exposed everyone's identity at this time, then the consequences, Li Shimin waved his hand and shouted, "Guards!" Seeing that the emperor was obviously angry at this time, little Gizi hurriedly knelt and said, "This servant is here. Quickly send out the Jinwu guards. Go out of the city tonight and send a message to the Chang and military camp, as well as Yuqigong and Qingyaojin. Tell them to leave now and not let anyone go up Shao Mountain. Anyone who dares to violate this order will be beheaded. Send a message to capture that old man Kang Yingda for me. Only escort him to the prison." Little Gizi had never seen the emperor so decisive. Horrified, he hurriedly turned around and hurriedly went to make arrangements. Little Gizi knew better than anyone the importance of this matter. Once Zhang Feng's identity was exposed, it would cause a chain reaction that would affect the entire imperial court, and even the steel weapons that Prince Zhang made on the mountain would cause chaos in the world. Even if something went wrong and it was spread to the ears of the Tujue spies, then, it was conceivable that the Tujue would just watch Prince Zhang make this thing. Would the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans watch? Would the people of the Guanlong noble clan and Tubo, who had just been urged, be quiet? After all, no one wanted to see a mountain on their head. Moreover, this mountain was covered with fatal poisonous thorns. Little Gizi didn't dare to delay and hurriedly went to make arrangements after leaving the imperial study. How could Li Shimin be in the mood at this time? After wandering around the imperial study for a long time, he waved his hand and said, "Send an imperial decree. Jiangsun Wuji, Fang Shenling, Du Ruhui, and Wei Zheng are to come quickly." A moment later, in the brightly lit imperial palace, an extremely tense atmosphere instantly fell into an extremely tense atmosphere. The imperial guards and Jinwu guards of the entire imperial palace were also issued in all directions, shuttling back and forth in the imperial palace and the streets of Chang, and before disappearing into the imperial palace and the alleys. However, everything seemed to be a little too late. At this time, Kang Yingda had already taken a document that he had made up and entered an inn in Shao Mountain Market. After entering, Kang Yingda took off the bamboo hat on his head and, like an old man in the fields, patted the dirt off his body and shouted at the waiter who was dozing off at the counter, "Waiter, a good room and a pot of good wine." Chapter 1332. Although the market on Pyrolite Mountain was built in a wide area beneath the mountain wall that led to and from White Deer Academy. In the beginning, this place looked very spacious and desolate. However, after more than 2 months of construction and an endless stream of businessmen found business opportunities, the houses and other things in the market square became more prosperous in Niu Weili's hands. If one did not know better, they would have thought that it was Chang and City. The cement road, which was originally wide enough for 3 carriages to drive side by side, was covered with a layer of rubber after the rubber factory moved to the mountain. Although it smelled a little unpleasant and sticky at first, it was very comfortable and soft to step on after it had dried. The houses on both sides of the street. Although Zhang Feng had renovated them twice, since Niu Weili came, the first row of shops such as grain stores, pawn shops, restaurants and other prosperous shops were set up. Behind the 2 rows of shops, there were small paths like those in Chang and City. Various snack stalls and markets were hidden in the small paths. On the side near the food factory, there were some exclusive markets for local businessmen in Chang and the Tang Dynasty. On the right side near the paper mill, there were houses, shops, and stalls built entirely by foreign businessmen. The whole market looked quite messy, but it was full of exotic charm. In the market there were all kinds of exotic snacks, drinks and other things, Even Western region singers were wearing veils on the street, wriggling their red faces to attract businessmen. Although Zhang Feng had already ordered that no slave trading was allowed here, as well as the gambling house, they didn't dare to do so openly. They could only use this kind of dance to attract business. At this moment, Kang Yingda was chewing hard on a piece of naan in his hand. On one hand he was wandering around the market. On the other hand he was admiring the scenery. More importantly, he was looking for something to give to Zhang Feng. Evidence to convict Niu Jinda. He had gone to the food factory early in the morning. However, he was almost caught by the patrolling officers. Last night, in the middle of the night, Kang Yingda heard a series of horse hooves outside the window. Kang Yingda didn't need to think to know that the emperor should know that he came here. Therefore, at this moment, only the merchants of the western regions could stroll around the smelly streets of the marketplace. It was the perfect shelter. After all, the previous him had never bothered to come to such a dirty place. In addition, who didn't have things to buy early in the morning? Who would come to such a place to suffer? They had managed to sneak into the market. But if he wanted to go up the mountain, the only way was blocked. That was the gate of the academy. At this moment, Kang Yingda was looking at the words on the gate of the academy from afar, slightly lost in thought. He did agree with the admonitions, but shouldn't the statue in front of the admonition be Saint Shu Kong? Which person on the tree was this? No matter how one looked at him, he looked like an outsider instead of a statue of someone from the Tang Dynasty. It was a disgrace for such a statue to appear here. Whether it was the statue's clothes, the short hair, or the thing on the eyes, which one of them was from the Tang Dynasty? Which one of them looked like something from the Tang Dynasty? Most importantly, this statue was very famous in this market. It was said that it was Zhang Feng's mentor. This made Kang Yingda even more certain that Zhang Feng must have done something shady on the mountain. After all, the clothes and the things made by Zhang Feng, which one of them looked like something from the Tang Dynasty? This was simply an outsider. Did the emperor forget the ancient saying that those who are not of our race must have a different heart? Did Niu Jinda forget? And Fang Xianling Wei Zheng? Did you all forget? But this was not the main point. The main point was that the security here was extremely tight. The guards here were all big and burly, and many of them had scars on their faces. Some of them even had injuries all over their bodies. With one look, one could tell that they had military backgrounds. How could such people be qualified to guard the door? This was simply too much. But at this moment he was stuck in front of this checkpoint. The next step was White Deer College. At this time, Kang Yingda was sitting under a willow tree with a crooked neck, staring at the door in a daze. He didn't notice that behind him, an old man with a crutch was staring at him with narrowed eyes. The old man was the old village chief. Behind the old village chief were more than 10 students from the mountain. The one leading them was Chen Wanli. Each of them was carrying a large bundle of white paper. The old village chief's voice still attracted Kang Yingda's attention. The moment he turned his face, the two old men couldn't help but be stunned. Master Kang? Your elder son? Chapter 1333. The old village chief's surname was Sunday. He was called Sun Dequan. In his early years he had been eating in Chang'an City. He had inadvertently gone to Kang Yingda's mansion to do some work. Because of his straightforward nature and the fact that he had accidentally bumped into Kang Yingda took pity on him and asked him to bring his letter to the Chang'an local government. That was how he got his current position as the governor of Tonghui Lane. He was equivalent to the village chief of a small village. Although he didn't care much. He ran errands for the government and coordinated some trivial matters in the entire market. After all, he couldn't go to the county government for trivial matters, right? Wouldn't that tire the county magistrate to death? The monthly salary wasn't much, only 30 copper coins. However, this was considered a profitable business in Chang'an City. The key was that he didn't care about anything. He didn't have to pay taxes. The old village chief had always been grateful to Kang Yingda. Although the old village chief would send his son to Kang Yingda's mansion every year during festivals, but he wasn't liked even if he went. This was something that the old village chief had always been brooding about. But today the old village chief didn't notice him at first. He just mistakenly thought that this old man was the father of a student who wanted to go up the mountain to see his son. He saw this kind of thing every day. At this time, the matters of Tonghui Lane were inherited by his son. But this Shao Mountain market was basically his alone. He could be considered the manager of the entire White Deer College. He had to take care of everything. After all, in his opinion, this was the business of Feng Zi. If he didn't have someone to take care of it for him with Zhang Feng's personality, it would have been over long ago. How could the old village chief not be surprised to see his old benefactor again? He hurriedly sized Kang Yingda up and said, Kongingda, what do you mean? What could Kongingda say? He stuttered for a long time but couldn't say anything. Seeing this, the old village chief turned around and said, Kid Qian, quickly take these pieces of paper and hand them to Feng Zi personally. I met a benefactor here. I'll go up the mountain later. Qian Wanli didn't notice Kongingda either. He only thought that Kongingda was just an old farmer who wanted to make a living here. He saluted Kongingda and hurried up the mountain. After all, he was carrying 100 kilograms of paper on his back. It was pressed down. After sending the few people away, the old village chief said warmly, Kong Gong, it's rare for you to come here. Earlier, this old man had always wanted to pay a visit to thank benefactor for your kindness in the past. However, due to my lowly status, I couldn't get through the door. Kongingda seemed to have seen a glimmer of hope. He smiled ruefully and said, You're too kind. It's just that the servants in the house are like dogs who bully others because of their master's power. When the old man returns, he will definitely discipline them well. Hearing this, the old village chief waved his hand. I wouldn't dare. There's no need to trouble Duke Kong with such a small matter. After all, this country has its laws and every family has its rules. Since Duke Kong has come here today, and this old man happens to be present, could this old man be so bold as to invite Duke Kong to this old man's residence for a chat so that this old man can perform his duties as a host and repay the kindness of those years? Kongingda rolled his eyes and said, Old man's son, may I ask if you are on this mountain? Oh. Thanks to this dean, this old man has managed to get good jobs in the entire Tonghui district. This old man is also honored that the entire papermaking workshop is under my watch. Furthermore, some of the daily affairs in the district are also under my care. At this moment, even the experienced and knowledgeable Kongingda was dumbfounded. He stood rooted to the ground and looked at the white paper that was being dried like snow. He said in shock, You are saying that this papermaking workshop is under your management? The mystery of the papermaking workshop was well known in the entire Chang'an. Everyone wanted to find out more about the papermaking workshop. After all, the papermaking workshop had replaced the papermaking industry of the past. One could imagine that a few hundred kilograms of white paper a day was equivalent to a month's production in the past. How terrifying was that? Kongingda originally thought that the papermaking workshop would be heavily guarded, and that there would be a heavyweight guarding it. However, he did not expect that there would not be a single guard here. Furthermore, it was an old man with a slave status who was in charge? What kind of operation was this? Could it be that in the eyes of Zhang Feng this thing was so worthless? At this moment, Kongingda was in a bad mood. He stared blankly at the papermaking workshop. Then, under the ostentatious introduction of the old village chief, he walked into an elegant brick house. What shocked him even more was, this brick house was no different from the houses in the district. What was this? How many people could use a brick to build a house? However, even though it wasn't a green brick but a red brick, it was still **King head. For this thing, other than those aristocratic families, other people would not be able to use brick to build houses. Even if they were to install brick on their door, they would still need to go to the government office to register it. Even the palace was not entirely made with brick, but here, Kongingda was a little dizzy. He could not help but interrupt the old village chief and ask, Old man's son, are all the houses here built with this red brick? The old village chief stroked his beard proudly and said with a sigh, Yes. Everything here was made by Feng Zi. My place is still considered simple and crude. You didn't go up the mountain. That mountain is the real magnificent one. By the way, Duke Kong, why are you here today? Chapter 1334. At this moment, Kongingda felt that there was something wrong with the mountain. Regardless of whether he was a brick or not, he was still a brick. According to the laws of the Tang Dynasty, this kind of thing was strictly controlled. Even in his mansion, only the main door was built with bricks. The rest was still made with mud. However, when compared to this place, in an instant, Kongingda felt as if he was a chicken that had walked into a phoenix's nest. Although this phoenix's nest was very small. Seeing that Kongingda was still immersed in shock and holding a brick in a daze, the village head couldn't help but shake his head. The old village head could only shake his head helplessly. Taking advantage of the situation, he walked out of the room and found a few workers from Tong Hui Fang. He had them bring a slip of paper and hurriedly went to the food factory to arrange the food. After all, the food factory was no longer the same as before. At this time, there were no pigs to be killed in the food factory. Basically, it was used to make cooked food and to prepare braised food for the restaurants opened by the Guanlong aristocrats in Chang'an. It was also a place to teach some skills to those who wanted to come here to learn the art of cooking. To put it bluntly, This was the kitchen for the thousands of people in White Deer College. It was also the place where the students on the mountain learned the art of cooking. When the village head returned to the house, Kong Ingda had already returned to normal. He lowered his head and smoked fiercely. The comfort in the old village head's heart could not be described with words. He could finally breathe a sigh of relief for once. Seeing that old son had returned, Kong Ingda asked, "Old son, you're saying that you're in charge of this paper mill and the market on the mountain?" The old village head silently laughed and said, "This is all because Feng Zi knows how to take care of the elderly. Otherwise, do you think this old man would have this opportunity? Moreover, this young man is also a person who values friendship and righteousness. I'm basically in charge of all the trivial matters on the mountain." As he spoke, the old village head sized up Kong Ingda and said, "Kong Ingda, judging from your appearance, are you retiring?" Kong Ingda was shocked. Did he know about yesterday's incident? He hurriedly and cautiously asked, "What do you mean?" The old village head carefully closed the door and then said in a low voice, "This morning the person who went to Chang and City to deliver goods said that you were dismissed by the emperor yesterday. Is there such a thing?" Kong Ingda didn't know how to answer. He asked carefully, "Who did you hear this from?" "The news has spread all over Chang and City. Don't you know? I heard that you had an argument with His Majesty yesterday and then His Majesty—" "Of course I don't believe it. After all, you are a virtuous minister. Not only me but many people in Chang and City are talking about it. There are also many people on the mountain talking about it." Hearing this, Kong Ingda nodded in relief. He sighed, "That's right. Yesterday in the imperial court, I was indeed at odds with the opinions of several dukes. In addition, I was tricked by Niu Jinda, that boorish fellow. That's why." Sigh. The old village head's face darkened when he heard this. He scolded, "That old bastard, don't let old man meet him. If the old man meets him, he will definitely give him a good scolding. How can such a loyal person like Kong Gong be wronged like this? Now let's go. Kong Gong, come with me to the mountain. Today I don't care about my face. I will definitely ask the dean to write a lawsuit for you in person to redress your grievances. Don't you know that the dean and Lord Zhang's son know each other? And you didn't see it last time. Even the Hongwen Guan, the Imperial College, Li Shaogong, Prince Li, and Duke Chen all came to the mountain, and the four great Confucians. Presumably, you came to the mountain this time for this matter, right? Or do you want to find a job on the mountain? Let me tell you, although this Feng Zi looks careless, he respects people with great knowledge like you very much. If you go up the mountain, Feng Zi will be so happy that he won't be able to sleep." The old village head boasted about Zhang Feng and was about to pull Kong Ingda up the mountain. However, Kong Ingda, who knew about this matter, came to find evidence. Why would he want to go up the mountain at this juncture? Moreover, with old man's son here, there would be no problem going up the mountain. Even in terms of safety, where could there be a safer place than here? Most importantly, who in the imperial court didn't know about the collusion between Duke Chen and the crown prince? How dare they come here? There must be a conspiracy behind this. Plus Li Shaogong, who are you people? If this isn't rebellion, then what is? However, it was obvious that the old village head must know a lot of secrets. Therefore, Kong Ingda didn't want to go up the mountain. Instead, he patted the old village head and said, "Old man's son, calm down. Old man is tired. It won't be too late to go up the mountain after resting here for a while." The old village head finally reacted. He hurriedly asked, "Duke Kong, this time you are?" Kong Ingda nodded with a smile. "Forget about the matters of the government. This old man is already so old. I wish to find a quiet place to spend my remaining years in secret. I've long heard of the White Deer Institute, and thus I decided to disguise myself and come here today to take a look. Although I haven't even ascended the mountain, the sight of the city square has already given me a fresh impression. This Zhang Feng is indeed a genius, and it seems like all of this is due to your efforts." The old village head laughed loudly and waved his hands. "You're too kind. All of this was done by Feng Zi. Let me tell you, Feng Zi is doing something big on the mountain right now. You mustn't tell others about it." Chapter 1335. That was what Kong Ingda wanted to hear. He hurriedly asked, "Old son, don't worry. I, Kong Ingda, am not that kind of junior. How can I do such a thing? Tell me, what is Prince Zhang doing on the mountain? Is he using the unprecedented teaching method again?" The old village head shook his head like a rattledrum. He didn't notice that Kong Ingda, the old fox, was tricking him. "Kong Ingda, you are wrong. Feng Zi has already handed over the teaching to the four great scholars. At this time there are only a few small chores following Feng Zi. By the way, the boy surnamed Chen you saw in the market just now is Feng Zi's student." "Then Prince Zhang is?" The old village head leaned close to Kong Ingda's ear and said mysteriously, "Didn't they just hold the autumn planting ceremony a few days ago?" During the autumn planting ceremony, Feng Zi took some people up the mountain. I didn't know what they were doing, but yesterday I saw Feng Zi with my own eyes. He was making something called phosphate fertilizer. And it's all done by those guys. They're wearing something called a mask. They don't even let others see it. It's quite mysterious. I wanted to go and take a look, but I was yelled at by Feng Zi. He said that if you don't wear a mask, you'll be poisoned. Phosphate fertilizer? Hearing that, Kong Ingda couldn't help but frown slightly. Then, did Prince Zhang say what phosphate fertilizer is? All this, I asked him. He said it was a good thing that could double the yield of the farmers in the field. Buzz. Kong Ingda's head suddenly exploded. He had heard that Niu Jinda had once gone to look for an iron mine and seemed to have brought back something. However, the dozens of people he had brought back were basically all dead by the time they returned. Moreover, he had fallen ill and said that he had been poisoned. Could it be, was this what Niu Jinda was trying to get? Wasn't this thing poisonous? Why could it increase the grain yield? This was simply unreasonable, okay? Everyone knew that something watered with poison was also poison. Who dared to eat it? How could this thing become something that could increase their income? This is simply an attempt to exterminate the people of the Tang Dynasty. What kind of vicious heart could do such a thing? Instantly, Kong Ingda was so angry that his entire body was trembling. Old man's son, is what you said true? The old village chief still didn't notice Kong Ingda's cold and angry eyes, saying without hesitation, "It's all true. And Fengzi has already planted a lot of them. The dozens of acres of experimental fields on the mountain have all used this stuff." This time, Kong Ingda was even more certain of his thoughts. There must be something shady going on this mountain. Otherwise it would be too bizarre. Thinking of this, Kong Ingda asked solemnly, "Old man's son, we've known each other for a few years, right?" The old village head didn't know what Kong Ingda meant. He hurriedly nodded and lamented, "This old man has been working in your residence for 3 years. Counting now, it's been 5 years. If it wasn't for that time." Before the old village head finished speaking, Kong Ingda said, "Then, have you ever seen this kind of thing? Although my Kong mansion is not as good as the Imperial Palace, I can still have a panoramic view of everything in the world. But today you want to deceive old man like this. Forget it, forget it. I'll just pretend that I didn't see you today. I'm leaving." How could the old village head be Kong Ingda's opponent? At this time he was even more confused. He hurriedly stopped Kong Ingda and said, "Mr. Kong, what do you mean?" Kong Ingda was so angry that he rolled up his sleeves and said, "You said that this thing is poisonous, but you also said that this phosphate fertilizer can double the income of the Zhuang family. Do you think that this old man has never farmed before and doesn't know these things?" This time, the old village head was anxious. He spread out his hands and said, "No, no, no, that's not what I mean. Listen to me. If you really can't do it, you can go up the mountain with me to see their experiment. Then you'll understand." You just said that it's poisonous. Now you're asking the old man to go. Are you trying to harm the old man? Forget it, forget it. Just pretend that old man didn't save you in the first place." After saying that, Kong Ingda was about to leave again. But how could the old village head let his savior leave like this? He hurriedly pulled Kong Ingda and said, "Mr. Kong, listen to me. That thing is indeed poisonous, but that's what they're doing now. I don't know where Feng Zi got some strange transparent glass bottles from. After burning the powder of the ore in the fire, that thing turned into smoke. Don't you think it's strange?" Zhang Tai said with a smile. "That thing is indeed poisonous. But that's what they're doing now. Then it settled down in a jar filled with water along the pipe and became phosphate fertilizer. And I've seen this thing with my own eyes. It's really not poisonous. If you really don't believe me, you can go up the mountain with me now. Let's go find Mr. Bosher. Mr. Bosher and Dr. Sun have seen it before. Dr. Sun has also tasted this thing. He's fine now." This time Kong Ingda was shocked again. He believed that the old village head wouldn't lie to him. After all, if it weren't for him, old man's son would have been gone by now. After thinking about it, Kong Ingda asked, "What you said, is it true?" "I swear to God. If there's half a lie, I'll die a horrible death. How about it?" Seeing this, Kong Ingda was relieved and asked, "Do you have that kind of phosphate fertilizer here? Can you give some to old man?" When the old village head saw that Kong Ingda was no longer angry, he smiled mysteriously and said, "If it was someone else, this old man wouldn't give away such a precious thing. But since you've spoken, I really do have a little. Originally, I wanted to get it from Feng Zi for the vegetable garden, so I'll give it to Kong Gong." Chapter 1336. At this moment Kongingda was so excited that his whole body was trembling. He really didn't know that this thing would come so easily. What was this? This was his chance to turn the tables. At this moment he even imagined the emperor's furious expression when he saw all this, and the things hidden behind those dukes. As long as this thing came out, wouldn't the emperor not think of it? Currently, while his imagination was running wild, the old village chief had already mysteriously taken out an oiled paper bag the size of a bowl from under the bed. After carefully opening it, a pungent smell wafted out, causing Kongingda's expression to change. Seeing this, the old village chief chuckled and said, "Kong Gong, there is no need to panic. Although this thing smells bad and pungent, it really isn't poisonous." Hearing this, Kongingda carefully approached. After looking at the snow-like thing, he was even more certain of his thoughts. However, he still asked again, "Old man's son, this is a serious matter. Don't lie to me." The old village chief's face stiffened and was about to swear again. However, at this moment there was a knock on the door. It was the worker who brought in the food. The old village chief hurriedly wrapped the oiled paper bag and handed it to Kongingda to open the door. At this moment, Kongingda had obtained the evidence. How could he be in the mood to stay? He hurriedly clasped his hands and said, "Old man's son, it's getting late. Old man's son still has to go back to teach the students. I will consider your matter carefully. After all, although the old man has been admiring the mountain for a long time, I still have to trouble you to deal with him for me. After all, I'm already so old." Hearing this, the old village chief was overjoyed and said, "You're too kind. Why don't you come up the mountain with me now? It won't take long. Moreover, Fengzi likes to make friends." "That won't be necessary. I really have something to do. Farewell." Without waiting for the old village chief to finish speaking, Kongingda had already hurriedly walked out of the door. When the old village chief came back to his senses, Kongingda had already disappeared from the door. The old village chief looked at the table full of dishes and hurriedly shouted, "Kong Gong, please eat before you leave." Meanwhile, Wuxia Gong had personally led his men to search through Mount Shao Market, as well as the surrounding areas. However, they still hadn't found a single trace of Kongingda. At this moment, Wuxia Gong and Qing Yaojin were standing at the entrance of White Deer College in a daze. "I say, old Yu, do you think this old man went up the mountain?" Qing Yaojin said with some uncertainty. After all, Zhang Feng had not been alerted to the current situation. If Kongingda were to find out about this, it would be troublesome if Kongingda were to expose their identities in a moment of desperation. Therefore, since last night, starting from Chang'an City, Qing Yaojin and Zhang Wuji had carried out a carpet search. They basically plowed the grass within 10 miles from the city gate to any place, but they still couldn't find a single clue. Until now, the 3,000 elite soldiers didn't even blink their eyes. Moreover, they had just found out from the guards that an old man had brought the Imperial College's document up the mountain last night. As a doctor from the Imperial College, Kongingda was naturally capable of this. Moreover, the seal of the document was on him. Did this mean that Kongingda had already gone up the mountain last night while they were searching the perimeter? Most importantly, no one had expected Kongingda to be so fast last night. Moreover, he had sent a message back to the palace from Chang'an, and then the emperor had ordered, after all this trouble. The guards here changed shifts every 6 hours. This meant that when Qing Yaojin and Zhang Wuji arrived, the guards had already changed shifts. Kongingda had also been let in by the guards who had changed shifts last night. However, it was only until just now, when the guards blocked the door again, that they realized. At this moment, the two of them looked at the mountain gate hesitantly. In order to alert the enemy, they had checked everything except the paper mill. Report. At this moment, a scout hurried over. Replying to the two sirs, last night when the inn in the market was about to close for the night, there was indeed an old man who checked in. Although he looked shabby, he was extremely generous and asked for a good room. Today the old man left before dawn. Even his mule is still in the hands of the innkeeper. When the two of them heard this, they couldn't help but be surprised. They looked in the direction of the paper mill and the mountain again. At this moment, only these two places had yet to be checked. Wuxia Gong asked uncertainly, "Old Hey, why don't I go up the mountain and you make a trip to the paper mill?" Qing Yaojin's head and waist were like a rattled drum when he heard this. "I'm not going. It's not like you don't know that the old village chief is a coward. Every time we go there, he takes half a day to let us in. Usually he won't even let an outsider in. Do you think he will let Kongingda in?" Thinking of this, Wuxia Gong felt that it made sense. At this moment, Kongingda's motive for going up the mountain was very clear. He was definitely going up the mountain to find something and definitely not to sightsee. Besides, although the paper mill was magical, it was only related to the paper-making technique. What else did the paper mill have? Other than paper, it was paper. Why would Konging-da come here? It was impossible just thinking about it. Finally, the two of them gritted their teeth and said at the same time, "Then shall we go up the mountain?" Qing Yaojin stroked his beard and waved his hand. "Surround the entire academy. We will go up the mountain to take a look." Chapter 1337. At this moment, there was no sign of Konging-da in the marketplace or anywhere else. This meant that they could lock onto Konging-da's location. After all, they had gone up the mountain. In addition to the people they had brought with them, there were only about 3,000 people. If they were spread out, there would be loopholes. Thus, Qing Yaojin's arrangement seemed the most reasonable at this moment. However, the two of them had missed out on the paper mill. The moment the two of them went up the mountain, Konging-da once again followed the crowd and entered the street where the Hu merchants were. He knew that at this moment, there would be many people looking for him. However, he did not know that in the entire marketplace, other than the main street, there was basically no sign of the Imperial Guards or the Chang'an garrison, let alone in such a suffocating place. Konging-da did not return to the inn to find a mule. Instead, he found a group of Hu merchants who were preparing to leave the mountain. He only paid 1 ingot of silver for them to put him into the compartment of a carriage. On the other side, as soon as Qing Yaojin and Li Qingqian went up the mountain, they ran into Li Qingqian, who was preparing to go down the mountain. Seeing this, Li Qingqian asked in surprise, "Uncles, what are you doing here?" The two of them were startled. Yu Qigong hurriedly asked, "Has Fengzi been with you all this time?" Li Qingqian did not know what Yu Qigong meant, but seeing his extremely serious expression, he hurriedly said, "Yes. We've been together since this morning and Fengzi has been. Let me ask you, has Konging-da gone up the mountain?" "Jim?" Li Qingqian was instantly taken aback. He knew about Konging-da's matter yesterday, and he also knew about what had happened at the foot of the mountain. Now he was going down the mountain to see what was going on. However, how could he have known that before he even went down the mountain, he would run into this matter? He hurriedly said, "I heard about this matter last night, and I also made arrangements on the mountain. I am going down the mountain for this matter. How could I have known that I would run into the two of you here? Could it be that Konging-da has not gone up the mountain? Or could it be that there has been a mistake? Is he trying to set up a trap and then take the opportunity to return to Shandong?" Yu Qigong and Li Qingqian's expressions changed greatly. Yu Qigong hurriedly asked, "Are you saying that Konging-da has not gone up the mountain? Why would I joke about such a thing?" This time Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin were in a bit of a predicament. Konging-da had returned to Shandong, but why would he appear in the market? But if you really want to go back to Shandong, you can talk to the emperor about it. After all, the emperor would allow it, so there was no need to be so sneaky, right? Most importantly, this matter was too inconceivable. Not at the foot of the mountain. Not on the mountain either. Even if you said you were going back to Shandong, you wouldn't have to set up a maze on the mountain, would you? Thinking of this, Yu Qigong slapped his thigh and said, "Not good. He must have gone to the paper mill. Let's go to the paper mill." Thinking of this, Li Qingqian and Qing Yaojin's expressions instantly changed. Konging-da came from a landowning household in Shandong province and was also a doctor from the Imperial College. White Deer College had a cooperative relationship with the Imperial College. If he came to the paper mill with documents, the old village chief and Qian Wanli might not be able to stop him. Thinking of this, Li Qingqian also remembered that Qian Wanli had gone up the mountain just now. He hurriedly shouted, "Quickly go down the mountain. I'll go ask that kid Qian Wanli. An hour before you came, that kid came up the mountain." Originally, the old village chief also came with him. He said that he met an acquaintance. Thinking of this, Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin couldn't stand still. They rushed down the mountain as if they were flying. They didn't know that this old thing really knew how to hide. He actually hid in that place. Why didn't he separate just now? This was great. They were dead meat. While the two of them were lost in their thoughts, Li Qingqian hurriedly returned to the farm. On the second floor of the farm, Zhang Feng was discussing something with Qian Wanli and the others. Seeing this, Li Qingqian hurriedly shouted, "Qian Wanli, did you just say that the old village chief met someone?" Because the distance wasn't very far, and Li Qingqian's voice was very loud, everyone in the laboratory looked over at this time. This was the first time they saw Li Qingqian so panicked. Zhang Feng held the railing in surprise, looked at Li Qingqian curiously and asked, "What's wrong with you? Were you chased by a dog?" Li Qingqian ignored Zhang Feng and continued to ask, "Tell me, isn't it?" Qian Wanli was also a little confused, but he still nodded, Yes, when we went up the mountain just now, we did see the old village chief meet someone. Did you hear that? What's that person's name? I heard the old village chief call him Kong Gong. Hearing this, Li Qingqian, who was running over here quickly, stopped in his tracks and asked in shock, "Are you sure?" Qian Wanli asked in a daze. But he still nodded, "I'm sure." The old village chief seemed to have asked him to go to the paper mill. Was over. Hearing this, Li Qingqian's expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly left again. This time, the people upstairs were even more dumbfounded. Zhang Feng looked at Li Qingqian blankly and asked, "Wanli, what's going on? Who is this Kong Gong?" How would Qian Wanli know who this person was? He smiled bitterly and spread out his hands, "I don't know either." Seeing this, Zhang Feng also didn't understand the situation, so he simply didn't care. He waved his hand and said, "Forget it, I don't care. I'll wait for you. When you're done with the things at hand, ask Ma Zhou and the others to come over from tomorrow. You guys focus on the second stage of the class and ask Tainyo and the others to teach you how to extract phosphate fertilizer." Chapter 1338. Of course, Yu Qigong and the others didn't find anything. Furthermore, when he saw the old village chief and found out everything from him, his expression changed abruptly. They hurriedly went down the mountain with their men. "This old thing, what kind of person are you? Why did you tell everyone about it? Although it's not like we can't talk about it, don't you know what happened to Kongingda yesterday?" After Yu Qigong and the other man had left for a long time, the old village chief finally realized the big problem. He pulled out his hair anxiously. "Kongingda, you old bastard, how dare you come to old man's place to harm old man? Boys of Tonghui Lane, go, go, go. Block Kongingda's door. Old man is going to give him dog shit." The old village chief told them the whole story while everyone was still in a daze. This time, everyone was completely stunned. Who was Kongingda? He was a third-grade official in the imperial court. Yesterday he was dismissed by the emperor because he wanted to impeach Zhang Feng. Last night he couldn't think about it and came to the mountain to look for evidence. They couldn't help but turn around and curse Yu Qigong and the other man. "You two bastards, why didn't you tell old man about what happened last night? How can you do things like this? This is simply preposterous. But what's the use of saying that now?" When the crowd angrily went to the sentry post on the mountain pass, they found that Kongingda had already left. This time the people of Tonghui Lane, as well as the people who had been treated kindly by Zhang Feng, were all angry. They picked up their weapons and followed the old village chief angrily to Chang'an City. At the same time, in a tea house in the east of Chang'an City. Naturally, everyone here knew Kongingda's identity. It was noon, the busiest time for the tea house. The storyteller between the second floor and the first floor was still talking about Zhang Feng's deeds. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Kongingda took off the hat on his head and shouted coldly, "What do you think about that Zhang Feng? Or some purple star lord who has descended to the mortal world? Why don't you take a look at this?" Kongingda's voice instantly angered everyone. However, the moment they saw that it was Kongingda, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Then they prostrated themselves on the ground. Even the officials and nobles on the second floor, as well as the nobles and aristocratic families, were somewhat surprised. Although Kongingda had been ordered by the emperor to recuperate at home, he was not removed from his official position as the message in Chang, and said. Besides, he was a great Confucian scholar, so he deserved their respect. Kongingda didn't care about these empty words at this moment. He walked slowly to the storyteller's place between the second floor and the first floor as he took out an oiled paper package. "Just now, I heard you say that the dean of White Deer College, Chancellor Zhang Feng, and the great Confucian scholar of harmony, is Purple Star Lord who has descended to the mortal world?" The storyteller was not surprised. He cupped his fists and said, "That's right. This was divined by Master Yuan Tiangang himself." Kongingda nodded and slowly unwrapped the oiled paper package in his hand. He said, 3 days ago I did have the same idea about this guy named Zhang Feng. He improved a lot of things in the Tang Dynasty. First, he solved the drought in Longyu Road. Secondly, he solved the locust plague and the famine in Chang, and city after the locust plague. These are all his achievements. These are great things. The crowd did not understand what he was trying to say. These were all things that everyone knew. However, they still listened to him carefully. After all, this was a great Confucian scholar. It was rare to see a great Confucian scholar tell a story in person. Besides, they could see it today, which was enough to show off for the rest of their lives. However, at this moment, Kongingda changed the topic. However, this was 3 days ago. I think everyone knows that the dean of White Deer College is proficient in medical skills. He even knows the blood-snatching life-changing method. He can even regenerate broken bones? Old man wants to ask who has seen the blood-snatching life-changing method. However, the one with the broken leg is real. This old man saw it with his own eyes yesterday. Furthermore, during the morning exercises yesterday, I also heard about a huge matter. In an instant, everyone's eyes widened. Very few people knew about this secret. However, the people on the second floor knew about it. At this moment, someone wanted to stop Kong Da, but he looked like a mad dog. No one dared to say anything. They could only listen quietly. However, it was different for the people. The blood-snatching life-changing method was passed down from the mountain. No one knew whether it was real or not, let alone the regenerating broken bones. However, Kong Da said that the regenerating broken bones was real? Could it be that this was real? However, the crowd thought too much. At this moment, Kong Da waited for the atmosphere to rise a little before saying, "Yesterday, Lord Zhang Sun said in front of the emperor that Zhang Feng from White Deer College had developed something that could double the yield per moon." What? Chapter 1339. Now, everyone knew how much grain could be produced per mu. The people on the second floor. Basically, each family had at least a few dozen mu of land, and the peasant commoners on the first floor also had more or less fields. Some of the fields were given to the big families to grow food, and then according to the harvest the main family would give them some food. The slightly better off families also had 2 or 3 mu of land. This was their capital to live a peaceful life. However, they were not rich and did not have much grain. This year they suddenly encountered a grasshopper disaster and a food shortage. How could they have any grain? They lived frugally for this autumn planting so that they would not starve like this year. However, this was only so that they would not starve. As for the people on the second floor, they were already in an uproar. They came here because they knew some things in the imperial court. Therefore they wanted to ask if these things were true. However, before they could ask, they heard more explosive news. How could they not be excited? Although they did not dare to spread the news about Kong Da in the imperial court yesterday, they could still circulate it internally. Generously. The news of Kong Da sneaking up the mountain last night, coupled with Kong Da's current attire, made everyone on the second floor understand instantly. All of this was real. At this moment, a voice that Kong Da was familiar with came from behind a screen in a private room on the second floor. "Duke Kong, is what you said true?" Although Kong Da did not see the person, he could tell from the voice that this person should be the minister of Taichang Temple. However, due to the current situation, he did not dare to show himself. However, he could not suppress the desire in his heart. Kong Da did not speak. Instead, he slowly opened the oiled paper bag in his hand and placed it on the storyteller's table. In an instant, everyone's eyes were attracted by the snow-colored thing. This thing was whiter than the fine salt and even whiter than the snow. In an instant, everyone was in an uproar. Kong Da pointed at the thing on the table and said, "This thing, I'm afraid everyone wants to know what it is. But please allow old man to keep us in suspense. We'll talk about this later. Let's talk about what everyone knows first. I'm sure everyone knows about the news that came from White Deer College a few days ago, 3 days after its opening, right? Someone was looking for an iron mine, but he accidentally found something poisonous and dozens of people died. You all should have heard a bit of the news, right? Chang and city wasn't big, so there were some things that couldn't be hidden even if one wanted to. Although Niu Jinda had walked around Chang and city, many people had still seen him. In addition, the people of Chang and city loved to wander around. Hence, everyone paid special attention to White Deer College. Therefore, everyone knew about this matter. But he didn't know what Kong Da meant. As for the people on the second floor, they were silent. This matter hadn't stopped since yesterday's court session. Even though the emperor didn't mention a word about it this morning, there were still more people talking about it. The more the emperor didn't mention it, the more people suspected it. Could it be the thing on the table? Did Kong Da want to die? Everyone on the second floor changed their expressions. They hurriedly covered their mouths and noses, and even those who had masks put them on. This made the people on the first floor panic. Kong Da said calmly, "That's right. This thing is the thing that poisoned them to death." In an instant, everyone was in an uproar when they heard the truth. However, there were some people in the crowd who were meticulous. Seeing that Kong Da was fine even though he was so close to that thing and was facing it calmly, they couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Kong Da, you already know that this thing is highly poisonous. Why didn't you avoid it?" "I didn't avoid it. Old man knows that after today, old man won't be able to keep his head. In that case, why would old man care about it?" As long as I can expose their conspiracy, this old man will pay a visit to His Majesty later and present this thing to His Majesty personally. I will tell His Majesty everything I saw on the mountain today. I believe that His Majesty will make a decision. Kongingda, you're really careless. But was this thing really the poisonous thing? But didn't you just say that this thing will increase the grain yield? What do you mean? Yes. I hope you can explain it to me, Kongingda. Seeing this, Kongingda grabbed a handful of phosphate fertilizer and said, "This thing is called phosphate fertilizer. People on the mountain said that once this thing is applied to the ground, it will increase the grain yield. But think about it. If it's poisonous, even if it can increase the grain yield, so what? After all, this thing is watered with poisonous things. No matter how fat the banker is, it will still be a poisonous thing. Instead, it will harm even more people. Now think about it. If this thing is really implemented, what will it be? It will kill all of us. This thing, even if it can produce thousands of caddies per moo, do you think we can eat it?" Hua. Chapter 1340. At this moment, everyone in the tea house was aghast. Yesterday there was news from the palace as well as the servants in the residences of the princes, dukes, and ministers. It was said that the news came from the political announcement hall that the dean of the White Deer Institute was researching something that could increase the supply of food. And the most important thing was, these things were said by the emperor himself. In the imperial court, Kongingda had been impeaching Zhang Feng and questioning Zhang Feng's shady dealings. In addition, he had heard that someone had broken his leg but was cured by Zhang Feng. But yesterday he had miraculously walked around Chang, and even went to Zhang Feng's residence. No one knew what he was doing, but Kongingda happened to see him. That was why the emperor was enraged at the end. Logically speaking, no one would believe such a thing. But who was Zhang Feng? He was the person who had solved the food crisis in Chang and City when Chang and City was short of food. It could be said that Zhang Feng had shouldered the lives of more than half of the people in Chang and City at that time. Later, he had built an academy on the mountain and saved the lives of a large number of disaster victims. Moreover, he didn't ask for money and let these people work in exchange for food. Not only was the food not made of chaff, but it was also better than what people ate during the new year. Most importantly, they were fed the same food every day. As a result, not only did the disaster victims not lose weight or starve to death in the past 3 months, most of them even gained weight. After that, Zhang Feng had built a market at the foot of Shao Mountain, built roads and barbecued basketball. Which one of these things hadn't been done by Zhang Feng? What was this? This was the real benefit. What about you, Kongingda? With just a few words, they claimed that everything Zhang Feng had created was fake and that it was a ploy to harm everyone's lives. If Zhang Feng was really that kind of person, then why did Zhang Feng save them and give them food? Why is this happening? Do you have nothing to do? Moreover, you, Kongingda, did you do anything good when the people of Chang and were suffering? You didn't even donate a little bit of food, and you didn't even give out a little bit of porridge at the entrance of the residence. The news spread like wildfire in Chang and City. In less than 2 hours, the whole city knew about it. After all, this was something that concerned everyone's lives. How could they not be concerned? Therefore, at this time there were 2 kinds of voices in Chang and City. One was that he believed that Zhang Feng would not do such a thing, nor would he do such a thing. However, there was still a group of people who were unhappy with Zhang Feng and White Deer College. When they connected the dots, they instantly understood what was going on. Why did the emperor personally issue an edict for an academy? Why was White Deer College ranked higher than Imperial College? Moreover, even though White Deer Academy was an academy, what sort of things were taught there? It was all things that no one could understand. Most importantly, the academy was not recruiting. However, even though the White Deer Institute had already opened its doors and was currently recruiting, the White Deer Institute did the exact opposite and stopped recruiting. Most importantly, what kind of things were being taught on the mountain? Every day, a large number of White Deer College students could be seen strolling around Chang and City. If they were not doing business, they would be carrying medicine boxes and looking for beggars to treat their injuries. Or they would go to restaurants and taverns. On the surface, they were there to practice cooking, but who knew what their real intentions were? Amidst the hubbub of discussion, Kongingda once again vanished without a trace and returned to his residence, seeming rather forthright as if he had finished his business and left. However, this angered Li Shimin. Whether the discussion was good or bad, it was not a good thing. After all, if no one stepped forward and this matter was allowed to fester, it would lead to a disaster. Originally, Li Shimin wanted to personally issue an edict to suppress this matter. He even wanted to directly arrest the culprit. However, Wei Jing blocked Li Shimin. He even pushed Sun Simiao out. In his opinion, Sun Simiao was a divine doctor and had a good reputation among the people. They could not believe anyone else, but who was divine Dr. Sun? As long as divine Dr. Sun confirmed this matter, no matter how big of a mess Kongingda created, it would be suppressed. Li Shimin nodded and sent a secret edict to invite Sun Simiao down from the classroom on the mountain. At first, Sun Simiao thought that someone in the imperial palace was seriously ill. However, when he arrived at Chang'an City, he found out that such a thing had happened. In an instant, Sun Simiao was also furious. Several pharmacy apprentices who were sent to the mountain went to find several respected doctors in Chang'an, and then brought Imperial Dr. Zhou out of the imperial palace. At this time they were at the entrance of the East Market. Sun Simiao directly set up a table and sat on it. In less than 2 hours, the news that Sun Simiao went down the mountain and was at the entrance of the East Market spread all over Chang'an City. How could the people in Chang'an not know why Sun Simiao went down the mountain? They hurried to the East Market and wanted to know whether this matter was true or not. However, when they came to the entrance of the East Market and saw Sun Simiao's face as dark as the bottom of a pot, they were shocked to find that Mr. Sun was angry. Could it be? That phosphate fertilizer could really double the grain and was not poisonous. Chapter 1341. Sun Simiao wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he sat on the chair and slowly drank his tea. Teacher, you are. Come to my residence. At this moment, Imperial Physician Zhou hurried to Sun Simiao's side, sweating profusely. Sun Simiao coldly glanced at Imperial Physician Zhou, the group of Imperial physicians behind him, and the doctor who was rushing over. He said, "Old man didn't ask you for anything before, but he said that being a person is like practicing medicine." But today, when the old man was recuperating on the mountain, he heard those filthy words. Hearing this, Imperial Physician Zhou and the others turned pale and bowed. They didn't dare to move. The onlookers, as well as the soldiers patrolling the streets, looked at Sun Simiao with reverence. They didn't dare to speak. After all, Sun Simiao's reputation was too great. Today this old man is not here for anything else. I don't want to know who is the one who thinks that phosphate fertilizer is poison and wants to plant poisonous food to harm people. Who is the one who spread such rumors? Old man only has one thing to say. I'm sure all of you are more aware of what White Deer Academy is doing than this old man. Regardless of whether it's the rescue of the refugees or the opening of the market, we haven't collected a single copper coin from you. What is this? Do you really think that Prince Zhang Feng is rich and overbearing? No. This is because Prince Zhang is kind-hearted. Otherwise, do you think he would spend so much effort? We are talking about the matter on the mountain. From the barren mountain until now, have you seen Zhang Feng collect a single copper coin from the students because of this matter? Where is your conscience? If it wasn't for Zhang Feng, think about it. Those pigs, chickens, ducks and locusts that made you suffer, would you be so comfortable now? Sun Simiao was furious. That brat Zhang Feng didn't care about his own life and went to research that phosphate fertilizer. Although he hadn't seen any results for the time being, he believed that the brat wouldn't do anything that would harm the heavens and reason. Otherwise, why would he make such an unnecessary move? Why didn't he just do it during the drought? Wouldn't it have been better if he had done it during the locust plague? There was no need to attract so much trouble, right? Moreover, Sun Simiao had experimented with the refined phosphate fertilizer before. In his courtyard he planted a large number of herbs. Most of them were precious varieties and some could be planted in large quantities. He couldn't bear to part with the precious herbs, so he used them on those herbs that could be mass-produced. Originally those medicinal herbs were all yellowish. However, in less than 3 days after the phosphate fertilizer was applied, he suddenly discovered that these yellowish medicinal herbs seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. They crazily increased in size and had a dark color. Looking at the momentum, this year's yellow ginger field, which was only the size of a dustpan, was simply more terrifying than the harvest of 1 mu of land in previous years. How could Sun Simiao not be shocked? Before he could ask Zhang Feng for some phosphate fertilizer to apply to his medicinal herbs in the courtyard, he received a secret order from Li Shimin. This really made the old man explode with anger. He plucked a handful of yellow ginger and didn't even care about his appearance. He wanted to find the rumor monger and have a good talk with him. However, when he came to Chang'an City, he found that things seemed to be more serious than he thought. After all, this thing was too important for all the people. It was simply a matter of everyone's safety. Although most of them believed it, they were led by those who didn't believe it. Although these people said that they believed it, who knew whether they believed it or not? Not to mention others. Even Sun Simiao didn't believe it when he didn't see the magical effect of the herbs he planted. At this time, after Sun Simiao vented his anger, he waved his hand and looked at the dozens of doctors who bowed in front of him. Some of you are disciples of the old man. Some of you have also received some guidance from the old man. Do you still know the character of the old man? Why did such a thing happen? What are you doing? Could it be that in your hearts, the old man is also the kind of person who deceives the world? When Imperial Dr. Zhou and others heard this, their faces changed instantly. They hurriedly said, "Master, what are you talking about?" When the rumor started to spread, we had already stood up, but we couldn't do anything. Sun Simiao looked at them coldly with his hands behind his back and said, "But you have no evidence? That is to say, even you don't believe that this thing is true?" Sun Simiao looked around and nodded. "I can't make a conclusion without seeing the thing itself. The old man didn't believe what Zhang Feng said before, but now the old man believes it. It turns out that all the compliments to the old man for so many years were perfunctory. Forget it. Today, since you want to know whether the phosphate fertilizer is poisonous, the old man will give you the answer." "Pa!" Sun Simiao angrily slammed the table. In an instant, the two children behind him quickly took out a lot of black things from the basket behind them and handed them to Sun Simiao. Sun Simiao raised the yellow ginger in his hand and said, "This thing, I believe you all know what it is, right?" While speaking under everyone's puzzled eyes, Sun Simiao actually plucked a yellow ginger leaf and threw it into his mouth. In an instant everyone was shocked. This is Chapter 1342. Everyone was shocked. Although this thing looked similar to a kind of plant, it was just a similarity. However, it was only similar. It was not the kind of thing they knew at all. That was yellow ginger. It was the most common kind of medicinal herb. Basically, every family would plant some of it. If one had a headache or fever, they could just boil a little bit of it and drink it. However, the leaves and stalks of yellow ginger that they knew were either light yellow or light green. How could it be as green as this thing? This was simply a dark green color. What was going on? Imperial Dr. Zhou seemed to have thought of something. And this emperor was a little spicy. If Sun Simiao kept eating it, there would be a big problem. Imperial Dr. Zhou hurriedly stepped forward and grabbed Sun Simiao. He said anxiously, "Teacher, don't eat anymore. Your body can't take it." Among the onlookers, as well as some of the doctors Sun Simiao had ordered before, they were all crying and kowtowing on the ground, begging Sun Simiao to stop eating. What a joke. Those doctors were fine. If these people didn't stop it quickly, if something really happened today, not to mention the emperor's anger, even if they had an illness, they would still want to see a doctor. They were the ones who forced the divine doctor to death. Do you think any doctor would dump them? Seeing this, Sun Simiao stopped. He pointed to the yellow ginger leaves in his hand and said, "This thing, old man, I believe you are all familiar with it, right?" "Yes, this thing is the most common yellow ginger. But you may ask, at this time, it is impossible for yellow ginger to grow so strong, so high and so green, right?" At this time, Sun Simiao didn't need to say anything. They understood in an instant. Was this all thanks to the phosphor fertilizer? Damn it, how was this possible? Imperial Dr. Zhou hurriedly asked, "Teacher, how long has the phosphate fertilizer been used for this yellow ginger? And those precious medicinal herbs in your courtyard, were they all used phosphate fertilizer? Is this the effect of phosphate fertilizer?" Sun Simiao nodded. He said proudly, "That's right. The old man did use phosphate fertilizer. Originally the old man was like all of you. He didn't believe that this stuff could have such a miraculous effect. Last time at the end of the worship ceremony that kid gave the old man some. The old man was a little reluctant, so he took it back and sprinkled it on the yellow ginger. But who would have thought that after just a few days of not paying attention, this thing gave this old man a big fright this morning? Originally, this old man wanted to pour in some of those precious medicinal herbs. In this way, not only would the production of all those precious medicinal herbs increase greatly, if in the case of that kind of illness, we wouldn't be in the predicament of not being able to find the medicinal herbs even though we have the prescription. However, old man was on the mountain. He heard someone say that this thing was poisonous. The old man now wants to ask, look at the old man eating this thing for such a long time. Is what the old man ate fake? Look at the old man. Do you see any signs of poisoning? Who is spreading this rumor? This old man will once again announce to the world that I don't care who spread this rumor, and I won't investigate. However, from now on, this old man will add another rule to this old man's rule. From now on, the Confucius family, the Shandong gentry, and the old man will never take a step into them. After that, Sun Simiao waved his sleeve and left angrily. This time, the whole East Market fell into a dead silence. Sun Simiao's status at this time could be said to be on an equal footing with the emperor. He also got the title of miracle-working doctor with his medical ethics and medical skills. In his life he had never fought with anyone, let alone made enemies with others. Today's matter was the first time Sun Simiao had encountered such a thing. It was also the first time everyone saw Sun Simiao so angry. Was this still the friendly divine Dr. Sun? If divine Dr. Sun were to remember his appearance today then? What if he had a headache or fever in the future? What if he didn't treat him? At this time, everyone panicked in an instant. Imperial Dr. Zhou rolled his eyes and seemed to understand Dr. Sun's meaning. He sighed sadly and looked at the people who were quietly leaving, saying, "The old man is the supervisor of the Imperial Hospital and the disciple of my teacher. My teacher's words are the words of the Imperial Hospital. From now on, unless the Emperor and the Crown Prince give an order, the old man will never take a step into the Confucius family. And he will not take a step into any Shandong gentry." At this time, everyone was inexplicably shocked. Did they directly fall out with each other? And it was with Dr. Sun and the Shandong gentry? What did this mean? At this time, everyone thought of an important thing. That was, why was Sun Simiao angry? Why did he eat yellow ginger in public? Wasn't all this because of the phosphate fertilizer? That was to say, the phosphate fertilizer was really effective, right? At this time, everyone couldn't calm down. They were both worried and excited. In an attic not far from the entrance of the East Market, Li Shimin slowly waved his folding fan and looked at all this with a smile. After seeing the changes in the people's expressions, Xiao Gizi, Wei Zheng, and the others hurriedly bowed and said, "Congratulations, Your Majesty." Chapter 1343. Li Shimin didn't expect that either. Before, whenever he asked Sun Simiao for help, Sun Simiao would refuse. But this time he thought Sun Simiao would still refuse. He didn't expect Sun Simiao to have such a big reaction after hearing this. Originally he didn't plan to go out of the palace. But after hearing Sun Simiao's scary expression, Li Shimin hurried out of the palace. He was afraid that Sun Simiao would do something extreme and it would be difficult to clean up the mess. But when he saw the yellow ginger, Li Shimin was relieved. This matter was finally done. But his interest in the phosphate fertilizer was no less than the people downstairs. On the contrary, he was looking forward to it. From the potato leaf brought by Niu Jinda to the yellow ginger, they were all products of phosphate fertilizer. Forget about the leaf, he didn't know what it was. But what about the yellow ginger? Who in the Tang Dynasty didn't know about it? Just this thing, how could it grow to this extent? If this thing was used on food, what would it look like? As for Sun Simiao's words about not going to the Kong mansion and not going to the noble families in Shandong, Sun Simiao had been doing this before. He just didn't fall out with him. But this time it could be seen that Sun Simiao was really angry. He might as well fall out with him directly. Who was Sun Simiao? No matter what he did in Shandong, would he really dare to fight with Sun Simiao? Although Sun Simiao seemed to be alone, if a doctor was forced into a corner, his appeal would be terrifying. Those who had been rescued by him before, as well as those who had long sought help from the godly doctor, would all be the first to stand up for him. From the court to the army to the people at dawn. Who would care about an aristocratic family that had little to do with them? Especially the people. Did they know what an aristocratic family was? Did your aristocratic family give them 1 tael of silver or 1 penny? Usually, these aristocratic families looked down on the people the most. Did you think that the aristocratic families would have a good time when this day came? That would be the real joke. Li Shimin stroked his beard and looked at the more lively Chang and city, falling into distress again. Damn it, what should he do now? Li Shimin closed the folding fan in his hand, turned around and paced around the room. He asked, "Now that this matter has been resolved, what should we do next?" Qing Yaojin was a little confused as he asked, "Second Master, this matter has already been resolved. What else is there to do? Shouldn't we be going back now?" Li Shimin glared at Qing Yaojin. "What I mean is, what if this group of people goes up the mountain?" "It won't happen, Second Master." Yu Qigong hurriedly said, "Think about it, now that such a big thing has happened, the security of Pyrolite Mountain will definitely be tighter. Besides, that kid is now a hot steamed bun who would dare to cause trouble. What if you provoke that brat? You know that brat. So, Second Master, you better not worry. We still have important matters to discuss." When Li Shimin thought of the major event that Yuchi spoke of, his expression involuntarily changed. He sighed and said, forget it. Let old Nyo go up the mountain. I don't want to see him during this period of time. Let him go up the mountain, and I'll be at ease with Feng Zi's safety." When they heard this, they breathed a sigh of relief. Li Shimin was about to go out with his hands behind his back, but after thinking for a while he asked, "How long can Qiuzi hold on? Why hasn't there been a report today?" "There is." Wei Jing hurriedly took out a memorial from his sleeve and handed it to Li Shimin. As soon as they saw this memorial, everyone's expression couldn't help but become solemn. This was the major event that Yu Qigong had mentioned earlier. 5 days ago, several Turkic spies had been discovered in Qiuzi City, and they had almost handed over the defensive map of Qiuzi City. Moreover, in the last few days the allied army of the Turks and India had set up camp at the border between the three countries, less than 300 li from Qiuzi City. There were also signs of a large number of soldiers in Tubo, Tuyuhun, and the Turkic territories. Many things revolved around the war in Qiuzi City. When Li Shimin and the others saw this memorial, they could not help but feel nervous. The more Li Shimin read the memorial, the gloomier his expression became. In the end, he snorted coldly and crushed the memorial into a ball. "Let's go back to the palace." On the other side, on the mountain, Zhang Feng still did not know what had happened at the foot of the mountain. At this moment he was accompanying Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao as they watched the craftsmen installing the glass and trimming the flowers and plants in the courtyard. Today Zhang Feng had just gotten some free time. When he heard that Arjunan had finished making the glass, Zhang Feng was very excited. He immediately put down the experiment in his hand and ran back to witness it with his own eyes. Although most of the glass was frosted, some, such as some of the glass in the room, were still transparent. However, the manufacturing process at this time was quite backward. There were still some impurities in the fired glass and more bubbles. Originally, Zhang Feng wanted to make a few mirrors. But the mirrors that he made, they were really not as good as bronze mirrors. After thinking about it, Zhang Feng gave up. After all, without some auxiliary materials, some things could not be made in this era by human labor alone. After all, it was not made by humans. It was the restriction of technology and the research of physics. At this moment, Cheng Chumo walked into Zhang Feng's courtyard, muttering. As soon as he saw Zhang Feng, he said, "Fengzi, did you ask Dr. Sun to go down the mountain?" Zhang Feng was stunned. "When did I ask him to go down the mountain?" Cheng Chumo was even more confused. "Are you sure you didn't?" "No." "Then why did I just hear that Dr. Sun angrily went down the mountain with a handful of yellow ginger?" Chapter 1344. It was rare for Zhang Feng to have a little free time. Originally, he planned to secretly take the two girls to the waterfall to try to catch some night fish after the glass was installed. But at this time he met Cheng Chumo. Zhang Feng couldn't help but have an idea. But at this time, seeing Cheng Chumo like this, Zhang Feng was also a little surprised. What did Mr. Sun go down the mountain to do? Although Cheng Chumo knew some things at the foot of the mountain, he dared not to say some things. Besides, this matter had nothing to do with Sun Simiao. Who knew that he went down the mountain? "I don't know, but I heard that he was very angry." Zhang Feng frowned slightly. After greeting the two girls he said, "Let's go to his villa and have a look." "No, old man is back." Before Zhang Feng went out, he met Sun Simiao, who came slowly with his hands behind his back. There was no expression on Sun Simiao's face at this time. It was the same as usual. Zhang Feng glanced at Sun Simiao suspiciously and asked, "Mr. Sun, I heard from Tainyo that you went down the mountain angrily?" What happened?" Sun Simiao waved his hand. "Nothing. It's just that a group of naughty children sneaked into a house in Chang, and then damaged some medicinal materials. But it's not a big problem. By the way, give old man more phosphate fertilizer later." Seeing that Sun Simiao was unwilling to say, Zhang Feng didn't want to smell anything. He just nodded. Seeing that Zhang Feng was going out, Sun Simiao asked subconsciously, "You are going to?" "Oh, nothing. Isn't it autumn now? I want to go to the waterfall to get some fish. Last time, I heard that a craftsman caught dozens of pounds of big fish in the lake." Sun Simiao opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything in the end and left. This made Zhang Feng more confused. But Cheng Chumo couldn't stay calm. He asked excitedly, "Feng, are you really going to get fish?" "Fish." The cafeteria on the mountain never lacked food. As long as you had enough meal tickets, even if you ate until you vomited, no one would care. However, within a month, the academy would only give each student a meal ticket once. No matter how rich you are, if you want to eat, sorry, please use your meal ticket. Meal tickets became a hard currency on the mountain. Compared to money, they were nothing. Slowly, the shops at the foot of the mountain also took advantage of this point. They collected meal tickets and then sold them. This kind of thing actually made a lot of money for those people. Unfortunately, after Zhang Feng found out about this, the people at the foot of the mountain followed the rules. Therefore, the fragrant fish in the cafeteria were only served to an extremely small number of students who had made outstanding contributions, or those who had achieved the best results in less than 7 days of examinations. Only then would the academy reward them with meal tickets ranging from 100 to 100. But one had to know that eating a fish or a table of delicacies only required 10 meal tickets worth 5 taels, plus a meal ticket worth the same amount of money. In the face of everyone's doubts, Mr. Bosher, there was only one sentence. Meat was for the capable. Why would you eat meat if you didn't have the ability? Wouldn't you feel ashamed? This time, Ching Chumo and others were miserable. Every time they saw Zhang Feng, they would take advantage of him. They had no choice. Their 100 meal tickets and 100 meal tickets were always used up in less than 10 days. If they didn't take advantage of Zhang Feng, would they starve to death? Who asked Zhang Feng to never ask for money for his meals on the mountain? So at this time, when they heard that Zhang Feng was going to get fish, they were so excited. Besides, no one could compare to Zhang Feng when it came to cooking fish. After a while, Zhang Feng, Ching Chumo and others came to the big lake under the waterfall. They saw Li Qingqian and others flopping in the lake. Zhang Feng was so angry that he picked up a stone and threw it at them. As soon as Lao Tzu left, you came to slack off? The few of them didn't know that Zhang Feng would actually come to this place, and even bring along his 2 beauties. They were so scared that they hurriedly put on their clothes and stood beside Zhang Feng with a smile, constantly winking. Zhang Feng pointed in the direction of the hatchery. Are you done? There's no more phosphor stone, and we've finished all our production today. How much? Didn't you say that each of us has 100 kilograms of phosphor fertilizer? We're done. As for Ma Zhou and the others, When Zhang Feng heard this, he looked again. Apart from these 5 idiots, he couldn't see a single one of them. In addition, Li Qingqian was speaking in a mumbling manner. Zhang Feng guessed that there was definitely something going on. Tell me, where are they? Didn't I ask you to take care of them? There's no need to take care of them. These guys aren't humans. Those guys are like animals. It's only been half a day and each of them has produced 150 kilograms of phosphor fertilizer. Didn't you say that after 6 hours they must rest for 4 hours? These guys thought that they were slow learners, so they went to study physics. So, when Zhang Feng heard this, he heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, a plan came to his mind. Looks like you've completed your mission. Fine, let's have fun today. As for the laboratory, don't go there for the time being. Give it to Ma Zhou and the others. Have a good rest tomorrow no matter what you do. As for the day after tomorrow, report to me first thing in the morning. When they heard this, they didn't have to go to that torture place anymore. Everyone stood neatly and gave Zhang Feng a military salute as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Yes. Chapter 1345. But at this moment, Li Qingqian inadvertently saw the faint smile at the corner of Zhang Feng's mouth and couldn't help but be shocked. He hurriedly asked, Fengzi, did something big happen? Zhang Feng waved his hand. Yes, something big happened. Now, continue to go into the water and catch fish. Whoever catches the most fish and the biggest fish will have an extremely comfortable time the day after tomorrow. That's equivalent to saying that you guys will be supervised by him and won't have to work. Li Qingqian couldn't help but be even more puzzled. Could Zhang Feng do such a thing? Did the sun rise from the west? Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly patted his chest and said, I promise if it's not like what I said, I Zhang Feng will write my name backwards. How about it? This time, Li Qingqian and the others didn't have a trace of suspicion. They pondered for a while and called Ching Chumo to the side to ask about the specific situation. After they really didn't find anything unusual, they hurriedly rushed into the water. Including Ching Chumo, who didn't know how to swim, also exploded into a large splash in the water. He really couldn't do anything about catching fish. He was so anxious that he angrily scolded everyone in the water. But on the other hand, Zhang Sun, Wei Shuyu, Li Qingqian, Du Hook and Fang's Love were in the water, going up and down and occasionally catching a few fish. Even Shiva and Gao Kan, who came later to inform Zhang Feng about the glass installation, also joined in the battle. After all, Shiva was a prince who grew up by the sea. When it came to catching fish, he was really good. In a short while, whether it was eels, loaches or anything else, they caught a lot. Li Qingqian was so angry that he directly went on strike. Zhang Feng smiled and looked at Li Qingqian, who was sitting beside him sulking, and said, Do you want to catch more than them? Yes. Li Qingqian didn't even think and agreed. But looking at the guys in the water, he couldn't even catch a single one of them and instantly became depressed again. Zhang Feng laughed and said, If you want, I'll tell you a few things. Go and get them for me, I guarantee that you'll catch more fish than anyone else. Li Qingqian was a little suspicious. Really? When did I lie to you? Seeing this, Li Qingqian pushed Zhang Yuyao aside and hooked Zhang Feng's neck and said, "Bro, you're my brother. Tell me, what do you want? As long as I can get it, no matter how much it costs, I will find someone to get it right now." Li Qingqian was a person who cared about his face. In addition, this matter was to determine the leadership of the organization. He had to get his hands on it no matter what. Although he didn't know what to do. Seeing this, Zhang Feng smiled and said, "It's free and very cheap. Go and find me a large test tube with a rubber stopper. Of course, it's best if you can find a few more. Also, go to the lime kiln and get me some slaked lime." "Lise. That's it?" Zhang Feng patted the back of Li Qingqian's head and said, "Then what else do you want?" "Okay, wait, I'll be right there." After Li Qingqian left, Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao couldn't help but ask, "What are you going to do?" They had seen these two things before. Now that they heard Zhang Feng's words, they were even more puzzled. Most importantly, these two things were simply too common. Zhang Feng smiled and said, "I'm going to make a big firecracker." Zhang Feng had never forgotten about Qiuzi. Once the garrison there was surrounded by two armies, once those bastards knew about the situation, they would definitely go south in one go. When that happened, the entire west gate would be defenseless. Zhang Feng didn't dare to forget about this matter. In addition, Arcanon had brought him some bad news. Even after dismantling all the ironware in the shipyard, they had only managed to produce a batch of crossbows and ballistae. As for the composite bow that Zhang Feng had mentioned, the progress was even slower. In addition, Zhang Feng had improved several important parts of the Mingguang armor, so the steel was even more insufficient. This was the method that made Zhang Feng decide to take a different path. That was explosives. This thing. It was too simple. However, if one didn't know the ratio, it would take another 100 years for someone to accidentally create something like this, let alone now. Although firecrackers had been invented during the Warring States period, when gunpowder was invented, no one had ever used them in war. Zhang Feng had hesitated for a long time before deciding to do something like this. After all, once explosives appeared, it meant that the era of weapons was about to enter a period of decline. The consequence of this was that the damage caused by a war would be even greater. This was something that Zhang Feng didn't want to see. He wasn't a good person, but he wasn't a bad person either. If there was iron, he wouldn't want to take this path. But now, it was no longer up to him to decide. Once Qiuzi City fell, the entire Longyu Road would become someone else's territory again. The Golden Trade Route plan that he had painstakingly drawn up would go down the drain. This was something that Zhang Feng absolutely didn't want to see. What was even more frightening was that when that time came, Chang, and would no longer be a problem that the Wei River Alliance could solve. At this moment, Li Qingqian was panting as he rushed over with two big sacks on his back. He had just thrown the sacks to Zhang Feng when he said, "Fengzi, what's the use of these things?" Zhang Feng smiled and said, "You'll know soon enough." Chapter 1346. At this moment, the commotion on the shore had attracted the attention of the people in the water. Cheng Chimo and Gao Kanshiwa were fighting in a fit of pique, causing splashes in the water. As for Wei Shuyu and Du Go, they thought that they were not inferior and had left early. What a joke. Gao Kanshiwa was really beating him to death. Who could stand that? The key was that this batch was stubborn. He would listen to whatever Zhang Feng said and was always straightforward. As for Shiwa, what was he? He was someone who had lived by the sea since young and was naturally familiar with the water. At this moment, he and Fang Ai were fighting fiercely in the water. It seemed that Fang Ai was also fighting with Shiwa. In the end, Du Go, Wei Shuyu and Zhang Sun left the battlefield. They stared blankly at Zhang Feng, who was fiddling with the thing in his hand. Actually, this device was very simple. It was to put slaked lime into a bottle and poke a small hole in the bottle cap. That was it. In the slaked lime, Zhang Feng added some broken glass and a handful of small stones. It was very simple to make. This made them even more dumbfounded. They knew about slaked lime, not to mention this test bottle. Every day they would break a few of them. But at this moment, seeing that Zhang Feng was being so cautious, Zhang Sun was about to ask when Li Qingqian hurriedly stopped the two of them and let them watch quietly. No matter what Zhang Feng was doing now, it was a kind of knowledge. With Zhang Feng's temper, would he not tell them? Now that Zhang Feng was not doing it quickly, it meant that Zhang Feng was teaching them. Seeing this, Zhang Sun's heart was burning. He squatted on the ground and started fiddling with it like Zhang Feng. But he was stared down by Zhang Feng. "Don't look at how happy I am fiddling with it. With your wet body, go away. If it explodes, someone will die." Zhang Sun heard this and was confused. What? Explode? Someone will die? Just this little thing? Li Qingqian was also somewhat confused. However, due to Zhang Feng's current cautiousness, he hurriedly kicked Zhang Sunchang's butt, and even unceremoniously kicked this cousin of his to the ground. He hurriedly retreated a great distance. Feng Zi, are you sure this thing will kill people? Zhang Feng took the bottle and shook it. He glanced at them and said, when there's no water, it's fine even if you use it as a pillow to sleep, but you have to stop drooling. Just this. Hearing this, Zhang Sun became bolder again. Zhang Feng was right. Before the lime came into contact with water, it was indeed fine. But in this small bottle, once it came into contact with water, it would expand. Zhang Feng ignored them and shouted into the lake, come up, all of you. I'll let you guys see what it's like to catch fish. Gao Kan and Shiva were the most obedient. After hearing Zhang Feng's words, they hurriedly went ashore. Only Cheng Chumo and Fang Yai flopped around in the water for a while before they came ashore with a big fish in their arms. At this time, the shore was already filled with big and small fish, flopping around on the shore. However, this was not enough to attract everyone's attention. Everyone's gaze fell on the 2 small bottles in Zhang Feng's hands and the 3 test tube bottles filled with lime on the ground. When everyone was ashore, Zhang Feng handed the test tube bottle in his hand to Gao Kansas. He pointed at the lake and said, throw it out. Throw it as far away as you can. It's best to throw these bottles into the water as soon as possible. No. Didn't you just say that this thing can't touch water? Yes, Feng Zi, you want to? Without waiting for Cheng Chumo and the others to finish their questions, Gao Kan threw the experimental bottle in his hand and the 3 bottles on the ground into the water, almost into the center of the lake. The reason why Zhang Feng asked him to throw it was because he valued his strength. This guy. Just as everyone was puzzled. The bottles in the water emitted wisps of white smoke on the surface of the water, and then sank to the bottom of the water with a series of bubbles. Then there was no then. Li Qingqian was dumbfounded. He looked at Zhang Feng, who signaled the 2 girls to quickly cover their ears in confusion and said, that's it? That's it? Zhang Feng nodded. However, he covered his ears with a smirk. Although everyone was puzzled, after seeing Zhang Feng's smirk, everyone's expression changed and they hurriedly covered their ears. This grandson is too insidious. We can't be fooled by him. Boom, 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 boom. With 5 explosions accompanied by a burst of ear-piercing noise, everyone couldn't help but look at the surface of the water. At this moment, the surface of the water seemed to be boiling. In an instant, at the point of the explosion, a wave that was at least 10 feet high rose. Countless water splashed in all directions. The entire surface of the lake was like a pot of boiling water, rolling violently and emitting bursts of white smoke. However, on the boiling surface of the water, a large number of fish floated to the surface of the water bit by bit with their white bellies facing upwards. This. Chapter 1347. The commotion here instantly alerted a large group of patrolling guards on the mountain. At this time, the Academy's guards had been renamed as security guards by Zhang Feng. Unlike the patrolling soldiers, they were no longer holding swords or spears in their hands. Instead, they were holding a kind of wooden stick called a baseball bat that was not thick at the grip but slowly thickened along with the handle. This was the right granted to them by Zhang Feng. It was also a symbol of status. A group of people waving their sticks ran over to take a look. After seeing Zhang Feng, they immediately shielded Zhang Feng and the 2 madams behind them. Only then did they glare at Li Qingqian and the others angrily. Until Zhang Feng said 3 times that he was fine. But in desperation, Zhang Feng could only let the security guard check him up and down. After making sure that he was fine, the security guard left resentfully. But when he left, he saw the warning eyes of Cheng Chumo and the others. Cheng Chumo was so angry that he wanted to go up and beat them up. But he did not want to leave now. After all, there were still important things to do. After the security guard left, Yu Shernan and the others also heard the commotion and came over. After all, the commotion that Zhang Feng had caused just now was not small. When the 5 of them arrived and saw the fish bobbing up and down on the surface of the lake, they asked in surprise, Fengzi, what are you doing? Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly bowed and said, I have nothing to do, so I'm preparing to experiment with a new toy. At the same time, I want to improve the food. When the few old men heard this, they glared and pointed at the fish on the surface of the lake. Don't tell us that you made all these fish? At this time, not to mention how many fish he made, the entire surface of the lake was densely packed with fish. How many fish were there? Not to mention all the people here, even if all the students of the academy came to eat for a day, they probably would not be able to finish it. Was this to improve the food? Besides, how could the entire academy not hear you? Looking back, you said you were catching fish for fun? For fun? Is this fun? Ouyang Sun was trembling with anger and was about to curse when Zhang Feng hurriedly shouted, "What are you waiting for? Quickly go into the lake to catch the fish. Wait, I'll treat everyone in the academy to fish. What's more, it's an all-fish feast that you've never eaten before." Really? Are you serious? For Cheng Chimo and the others who were super gluttons, every new thing that Zhang Feng came up with was unparalleled in the world. Nowadays, fish was usually stewed in a pot or roasted over a fire. There was nothing else. Therefore, although there were so many fish that they could jump into your arms when you were washing your feet, there was no way to eat them. Moreover, they had more bones than meat. Who would eat them for no reason? But Zhang Feng was different. They had eaten it a few times in Zhang Feng's tavern. It was different every time. This was what surprised and shocked them the most. But this time, Zhang Feng actually said that he was going to treat everyone to an all-fish feast? Not to mention Ching Chumo and the others who were excited. Even Yu Shernan and the others were salivating at this time. But when they thought of the serious matter, they called Zhang Feng to the jujube tree. Seeing that there was no one around, they asked solemnly, "Fengzi, what's the matter with the fish? Why did it become like this after hearing a few sounds? Even if Mr. Sun drugged it, it wouldn't be so powerful. How did you do it?" Zhang Feng chuckled. He pretended to be mysterious and said, "Please wait for a while. I'll give you an answer soon." They didn't understand what Zhang Feng was going to do. But they were still prepared to wait. Zhang Feng picked up the set of things again, but this time he was going to show it to them. So Zhang Feng only chose a thumb-sized test tube with a cork. After filling the test tube with lime and some sand, he pointed to it and said, "Dear teachers, watch carefully." While speaking, Zhang Feng threw the test tube in his hand into the water again. After experiencing everything just now, the test tube exploded again like a firecracker. Bang! With a small wave on the water, Yu Shernan and the others' faces changed instantly. This time the experiment only used a small bottle the size of a thumb, but the power it caused greatly shocked the few of them. They could also imagine what had just happened on the lake. But it was also because of this that they looked so dignified. If this thing could be used here, then what would happen if it was thrown into a crowd of people? Ouyang Sun looked at Zhang Feng coldly and said, "Zhang Feng, kid, tell old man, what is this thing you made? What's its name?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. "This is what fried fish. If you want a name, then you can call it water thunder." Water thunder? I think what you put in it is the lime from the mouth of the kiln. Can this thing make such a big noise? Zhang Feng knew that they would have such doubts. He didn't say anything. Instead, after Li Qingqian and the others fished out the fish, he called everyone over and said, "Actually, the principle of this thing is in the physics textbook I gave you before. The theoretical experiment of this thing is called atmospheric pressure and hydraulic pressure." Chapter 1348. This thing. Yu Shernan and the others were completely dumbfounded. That thing was indeed in the textbook written by Zhang Feng, but this textbook was divided into two parts. The first part of the textbook was only elementary physics knowledge and most of it was mathematics knowledge. This was a course open to everyone. As for aerodynamics and the like, only Li Qingqian, Ma Zhou and the others could learn it. Only those who had stayed in the academy for more than half a year and were talented enough were qualified to learn more advanced things. But as for what Li Qingqian and the others were learning now, it was not something that ordinary people could learn. As for the few of them, they really didn't know about it. At this age, who would be bored enough to study this brain-burning machine? But at this time, when they heard Zhang Feng say this again, Yu Shernan and the others really couldn't sit still. Without waiting for them to speak, Li Qingqian hurriedly asked, "Fengzi, this thing of yours, can it be made by the natural collision of water and lime?" "More or less." Zhang Feng nodded and said, "There is another layer of meaning. You have seen this lime before. The main thing is that it expands when it meets water, producing infinite tension. You all know about the tension, right?" Zhang Feng pointed at the limestone on the ground. He picked up a piece of limestone and threw it into the water. In an instant, a large piece of limestone emitted bursts of white smoke in the water. In front of everyone's eyes, it instantly grew larger. At this time Zhang Feng said again, "Our glass bottle is only so big. This thing will expand infinitely when it meets water, and this bottle is a thing that restricts it. Once its pressure reaches a critical point, it will instantly produce a big explosion. Then it will explode like a pig's urine bubble. As for the thing inside, at this moment, it will use the principle of thermal expansion and contraction of water and air to explode instantly." As Zhang Feng said, he once again put some lime into a larger glass bottle and threw it into the lake. In a moment, that bottle once again burst out a burst of ear-piercing explosions. In an instant, everyone was shocked again. This was the first time they had seriously watched the creation of this thing, as well as the entire process of its explosion. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but gasp. Ouyang Sun couldn't help but ask, "Kid, did you prepare this for Long Yu Dao?" Ouyang Sun naturally knew about the Long Yu Dao. In addition, the iron had not been found during this period of time. At this time, Zhang Feng suddenly took this thing out. Zhang Feng really didn't know about this. He really had no patience for fishing. Most importantly, they were on the mountain. He had only thought of this in a flash of inspiration. He only wanted to improve the meals for Li Qingqian and the others. However, after hearing what Ouyang Sun had said, he immediately changed his mind. Zhang Feng suddenly slapped his head and said, "That's right. How could I have forgotten about that?" Ouyang Sun's expression froze when he heard this. "You didn't think of it?" Zhang Feng spread his hands. "I really didn't think of this problem. But thanks to you, if not for you, this Long Yu Dao matter would really be a headache. Come, Tainyo, go get me some fish and firewood. Today is a memorable day. Let's eat and drink while we talk about our new plan." Ouyang Sun's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He also knew about what happened at the foot of the mountain. Although Zhang Feng didn't know, they all knew clearly. Seeing this, Ouyang Sun and Yu Shinan looked at each other. Yu Shinan waved his hand and said, "Fengzi, come, let's talk about something serious. Li Gan, go and find your father." Zhang Feng knew what Yu Shinan and the others meant, but he was also a little confused. Wasn't it just a homemade bomb? Why were they so cautious? Actually, once this thing was completed, he would be able to do it. That was, to be honest, this thing could really become a sharp weapon for Long Yu Dao. Zhang Feng didn't hesitate. He asked Qing Chimo and the others to call Ma Zhou and the others over. After all, that experiment had been done for a long time, and Zhang Feng didn't know how it would turn out. But about this bomb and the principle, he still had to explain clearly to them so that they wouldn't talk about it one after another. Troublesome. While waiting for the others, Zhang Feng was also pickling fish and picking out the fish that he wanted to eat with the lotus leaf bar. He also found the people in the cafeteria and threw the fish to them, explaining how to make paper-wrapped fish. At this moment, Li Shimin rode a white horse and hurriedly followed Li Qingqian up the mountain. As soon as he saw Li Shimin, Zhang Feng asked the others to start roasting fish according to his instructions. Then he slowly entered Yu Shernan's villa. As soon as he entered, he found that no one was sitting here. Instead, everyone was looking at him with a serious expression. However, Niu Jinda, Yu Qigong and Chen Yaojin were extremely excited. Before Zhang Feng could speak, Li Qingqian hurriedly closed the door and ordered Shiwa and Gao Ken to guard the door. However, Zhang Feng refused. In the end, Li Shimin had to let Xiao Gizi lead a large number of guards to surround the entire villa. At this moment, Li Shimin asked seriously, "Fengzi, I heard that you just made something amazing on the mountain." Chapter 1349. Li Shimin was originally in the imperial court with Wei Zheng and the others, having a headache over this matter. The matter of Long Yu was imminent. But at this time, the only way was to hope that Zhang Feng could produce the strong crossbow and the ballista in a short time. As for the composite bow, Li Shimin did not take it to heart. After all, the news he received was that this thing was extremely consumable, so Li Shimin did not use it as the main thing to fight against Long Yu this time. But the news he received this morning was that at least 300,000 Indian and Turkic soldiers had been discovered. Even if they had the ballista, it would not be of any help. At most, they would have a slight chance of winning. But just now, Li Shimin and the others could not help but be excited after Li Qingqian hurried back to the palace and told them about the situation of the fried fish. Immediately, they did not care about anything else and hurriedly went up the mountain. But when he saw that Zhang Feng was actually roasting fish under the waterfall, how could he sit still? Almost everyone in the room had the same thought as Li Shimin. Although Yu Shernan and the others did not advocate using this method, they also knew that once the armies formed an encirclement and arrived at Chiotzi, it meant that the Tang Dynasty would be involved in the flames of war again. Originally, the Tang Dynasty was not rich at this time. So at this time, when they saw Zhang Feng's thing and Zhang Feng's actions just now, they had the urge to beat Ouyang Sun to death. At this time, when they saw Li Shimin's situation, who dared to sit down, Zhang Feng saw that they were so cautious and Li Shimin asked this question. Zhang Feng nodded, then shook his head and said, "Sit down, why are you standing?" "Actually, I didn't think of this thing just now. I was just thinking of using it to fry fish. But Mr. Shimpan's words just now really reminded me. Yes, this thing can be used in the front line, but it's useless to have it now." Li Qingqian heard this and asked in surprise, "Why is that? Wasn't it powerful enough just now?" Zhang Feng nodded. "The power is indeed sufficient, but it has a prerequisite, and that is to come into contact with water. Moreover, we can't control the process of him coming into contact with the water and the detonation process. When Yu Qigong heard that, he glared at him and said, "So after all that talk, this thing of yours is useless apart from being able to fry fish?" This time, they could not help but feel disappointed. He had come all the way here and this was it? How could they accept this? Li Shimin also lit a cigarette and took a deep puff. He sat beside Zhang Feng and sighed, "AI. Fengzi, you don't know this, but this morning Lord Zhang Sun sent someone to ask me what you have done with those things. You don't know this, but now the Indian and Turkic armies of 300,000 have gathered at the border less than 300 miles away from Chotsi city. According to the scouts, Tuli Khan has personally led an army of 150,000 to Sheli's tribe 3 days ago. In other words, once they have figured out the situation in Chotsi city will be in danger." This was not alarmist talk. After Zhang Feng heard this, he suddenly looked at everyone and asked suspiciously, "Could it be that all of you already knew about this?" No one said anything. Zhang Feng felt more and more that they should have known about this matter long ago. Zhang Feng was not happy. "I say, Laoli, this is your fault. Tell me, are we brothers? How are we brothers? Look at what you've done. What kind of thing is this? Why did all of you know about this but I didn't get any news? You guys, on the other hand, I worked myself to death on the mountain, but I didn't know anything about what was going on outside." Li Shimin was shocked. He quickly asked in surprise, "You didn't know?" Zhang Feng spread his hands innocently, "How could I know?" Li Shimin sighed and said, "I thought they had told you. Alright, let's not talk about it anymore. Li Qian, you too. How could you forget such an important matter? Remember to tell Feng Zi more about what happened at the foot of the mountain." Li Qingqian nodded, feeling wronged. At this time Li Shimin asked again, "Feng Zi, let's not dwell on this matter. Tell me, can this thing be used in Chotsi city?" Zhang Feng did not dwell on this matter. He nodded and said, "Yes." Before Li Shimin could be happy, Zhang Feng continued, "But there is a prerequisite, and that is to modify this thing. Otherwise it will be a disgrace if it goes." "Then tell us, kid. What are you waiting for? The brothers at the front can't hold on any longer." Yu Qigong, Niu Jinda, and Qing Yaojin were so anxious that they wanted to strangle Zhang Feng. Li Shimin was also a little anxious. But at this time the old scholar's voice came from outside the door. "Wait." Chapter 1350. Everyone in the room was shocked to hear this. Everyone looked at Li Shimin. Old Xiu must have come to stop Zhang Feng from making this thing. This was exactly what Yu Shernan and the others wanted. However, old Xiu was too stubborn. If he offended the emperor at this time, wouldn't that be? Li Shimin sighed helplessly. "Let him in." Old Xiu looked around the room as soon as he entered. Then he said to Zhang Feng, "Fengzi, can you not use that thing you made in any war?" Zhang Feng didn't think too much about it. After all, this matter had already happened. Moreover, he already knew about Chotsi city. It was his decision. Regardless of whether Chotsi city would win the war or not, he must eliminate the nobles in the city. Chotsi city would become a trading hub and an important location for Zhang Feng's future plans. He couldn't afford to lose it. Zhang Feng sighed. "Old Xiu, I really don't want to start a war. No one knows the power and terror of this thing better than I do. The terrifying power it can cause is definitely not something that swords, spears, or arrows can compare to. If you're injured by it, you'll either die or lose an arm or a leg. However, you should also know the importance of Chotsi city to the Tang Dynasty. If Chotsi city fails, the western gate of the Tang Dynasty will no longer be safe. You should know that all the military forces in Chotsi city are the sum of all the military forces in the western part of the Tang Dynasty. If we fail, the Turks will take advantage of the situation and invade the south in large numbers. You should know that this year the Tang Dynasty is not the only one affected by the disaster. The Turks in Tubo, India, are suffering from a more serious plague of locusts and food shortages. But only our Tang Dynasty reacted the fastest. How could this not attract their attention?" Li Shimin also sighed slightly. Fengzi is right. This morning Lord Zhang Sun brought His Majesty's message. Basically, this time the Tang Dynasty didn't take the initiative to start a war, but counterattacked. Once the Tang Dynasty fails to win this war, Mr. Zihuai, just think about it. Peace in the world is nothing but empty talk. Yu Shernan and the others were also constantly persuading old Xiu to give up his original obsession. He really didn't want to see a war, especially at such a time. If the soldiers and horses moved, they would be burning money and food. But it was the same at this time. The Tang Dynasty could not afford it. Coupled with the current situation in the Tang Dynasty, once Zhang Feng appeared here, it would inevitably cause more danger, which was the last thing the old scholar wanted to see. But now, His Majesty had already said so. If he said anything else he would be tactless. The old scholar looked at Zhang Feng and then looked at Li Shimin. In the end he could only sigh helplessly. I've heard about that thing. It's too lethal. If word gets out that it was Fengzi who did it, have you thought about how the world and the person behind it would impeach Fengzi? How will the world view White Deer College? Brother Zihuai, why don't you listen to what Fengzi has to say first? Yu Shernan saw Li Shimin's face gradually turn gloomy and hurriedly pulled the old scholar to the side to sit down. Zhang Feng also saw Li Shimin's expression and was somewhat suspicious. Lao Li, this is His Majesty's matter. Why do I feel that you are more anxious than His Majesty? Li Shimin was shocked. He hurriedly said, how can I not be anxious? His Majesty already knows that you're tinkering with this weapon. He originally wanted to come and see you, but for some reason he couldn't come. Moreover, basically everyone in the imperial court knows about this thing. If Chotzi is defeated, then think about it. You're a viscount and you'll be fine, but we'll all die. Do you think we should be anxious? Yu Shernan and the others heard this and nodded repeatedly. They completely ignored the old scholar's expression. Zhang Feng was also confused by these people's words. He hurriedly comforted them. Don't be anxious. It's just a small matter. Can't I take care of it? Moreover, this thing is actually everywhere in our lives. As long as we have enough saltpeter and gunpowder and enough manpower, I can get you a large batch in 3 days. Moreover, the power of this thing is definitely not inferior to the thing I threw at the waterfall just now. In fact, it's dozens of times more powerful than that thing. Yu Shernan and the others had seen the power of the homemade bomb that blew up Chotzi City. Although Li Shimin and the others had not seen it with their own eyes, they still knew a little about it from Li Qingxian's description. Now that they heard Zhang Feng say that the power of this thing was dozens of times more powerful than that homemade bomb, their expressions couldn't help but change abruptly. They all stood up and stared at him with burning eyes. Almost in unison they asked, is what you said true? This thing can really do that? Zhang Feng was more speechless. But he still nodded. I guarantee it. The power and lethality of this thing is definitely something you've never seen before. As long as we have this thing as a trump card in Chotzi City, I believe that even if 1,000,000 soldiers come, they won't be able to do anything to us. Chapter 1351. Li Shimin's heart was burning with excitement. Yu Shernan and the others were also stunned by Zhang Feng's words. They had seen the power of that thing just now. How could it be used to stop an army of 1,000,000 soldiers? Was that a joke? However, what Zhang Feng said next made everyone's hair stand on end. Basically, the first part was about the power of gunpowder, and the second part was mainly about the effects and dangers of explosives. Li Shimin and the others felt as if they were listening to a book from heaven. They were excited, and confused at the same time. After a full hour, Zhang Feng finally explained the matter of the gunpowder clearly. Li Shimin said in astonishment, so you've been talking for an hour. This thing you're talking about is actually a large firecracker? Yes. Hearing that, Li Shimin was dumbfounded. He felt that he had been fooled by Zhang Feng. They all knew about the firecrackers, but they had never seen such powerful firecrackers before. But why did it become such a terrifying thing in Zhang Feng's eyes? It didn't make sense at all. Sigh. Li Shimin closed his eyes in pain. He sighed and said, after all this time, this thing you mentioned is a firecracker. Zhang Feng nodded. That's right. Isn't this a big firecracker? But do you really know anything about firecrackers? Yu Qigong was unhappy when he heard that. His family owned a firecracker factory, so he knew a little about firecrackers. Seeing that this thing was actually a firecracker, he said, Fengzi, after all this time you're telling me that this is a firecracker? To be honest, my family owns a firecracker factory, but I don't think it's as amazing as you make it out to be. Are you setting off firecrackers for the two armies when they're facing each other? Is this a joke? Zhang Feng chuckled and said, I'm not joking. Old Yu, your family actually runs a firecracker factory. I'm just a newbie now. Go and find a firecracker. I'll give it a try now. Look at these firecrackers. What will the firecrackers you usually talk about turn into in my hands? Yu Qigong was really excited. He hurriedly went out to look for firecrackers. After all, when Zhang Feng opened the sect last time, he had saved a lot of firecrackers. Looking for firecrackers at this time was just like looking for something. Not long after, Yu Qigong really did find a large basket of firecrackers. Seeing this, Zhang Feng could only bring them to the edge of the waterfall again. He asked someone to dig a big pit beside the waterfall, and Zhang Feng carefully connected the fuses of all the firecrackers together. Seeing that the pit was dug deep enough, Zhang Feng asked someone to throw the firecracker frames in. Then he asked someone to fill the pit with stones and wood. Then he took Li Shimin and the others to hide far away. He waved at Cheng Chumo, who was full of suspicion. Cheng Chumo calmly lit the torch in his hand with a match and then threw it into the basket of firecrackers. Weren't these things just firecrackers? Who hadn't played with them when they were young? Was there a need to be so nervous? But before Cheng Chumo walked far, he heard a sound that made his scalp tingle. It exploded behind him. Boom! Out of instinct, coupled with his unstable footing, Cheng Chumo staggered and fell into the lake next to him. But at this moment, in the smoke and dust that filled the sky, pieces of gravel flew in all directions like a fairy scattering flowers. This time everyone was dumbstruck. Even if they were still 100 feet away, they could still occasionally be hit by small stones. How far was this? This was 100 feet. Was this still the firecracker? Was this still the thing that looked ordinary in daily life? The power of this thing was really not a joke, was it? This time, everyone was aghast. They were stunned by this ordinary firecracker. I say, Fengzi, are you sure this firecracker is really so powerful? Li Shimin excitedly put his arms around Zhang Feng's neck and asked. In an instant, Zhang Feng's face suddenly turned pale. Li Shimin was so scared that he hurriedly let go of Zhang Feng. After a while, Zhang Feng came to himself. He looked at Li Shimin speechlessly and rolled his eyes, saying, Why don't you say it properly? I just asked you a question. Why are you ready to murder me? Li Shimin smiled. Well, I'm just excited. By the way, tell me, can this firecracker really be used in Qiuzi City? Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. If you want to be funny, you can try to use the firecracker. But your idea is good. You can use the firecracker to confuse the enemy and then use the bomb. The effect will be better. Li Shimin and others were even more confused. Tell me. Don't dilly-dally. Just tell me, is this firecracker okay? And if it's not okay, what should we use to replace it? As long as you can tell me, I, Lao Li, will get it for you today. Zhang Feng sighed and said, In fact, the things used are what the firecrackers need. I don't understand. These are all things handed down by our ancestors. How can you forget all of them? Isn't this thing 1 nitrate, 2 yellow, and 3 gunpowder? Chapter 1352. Gunpowder. It was invented by alchemists as early as the time of Qin Shi Huang. However, although these things were invented, they had always been in the hands of alchemists. Therefore, it was normal for them not to know some things. However, they could make firecrackers, but they couldn't make this thing? Thinking of this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but look at the burned firecrackers in surprise and ask, Old you said that your family is in the firecrackers business. Are you sure you don't know the formula of this thing? How would Yu Qigong know this thing? He pointed at Sun Simiao and said, You might as well ask Dr. Sunday. Dr. Sun knows something about this thing. Let me tell you who knows what you are talking about. I only know that there is bamboo and some gunpowder in my firecrackers. As for other things, yes, there is also some yellow mud. That's it? When Zhang Feng heard this, he couldn't help but be amused. He looked at Sun Simiao and said, Old Sun, do you really know this? In history, it was indeed recorded that Sun Simiao knew some alchemy and later refined the elixir of immortality for Li Shimin with Yuan Tiangang. However, this was all history. As for whether it was true or not, Zhang Feng really didn't dare to ask. After all, this matter had to be done slowly. But today he actually encountered it. Zhang Feng couldn't help but want to ask. Although this was other people's privacy, there were so many people at this time. Moreover, it was old Yu who said it first, so it had nothing to do with Zhang Feng. Sun Simiao stroked his beard and sighed, That firecracker, do you know why it was called firecracker in the beginning? Wei Jing said in surprise, This old man only knows that it was because the bamboo was burned and exploded in the fire, which led to the birth of firecrackers. This is also the predecessor of firecrackers. It said that during the Han Dynasty there was an alchemist. Because he was poor, he accidentally saw the explosion of bamboo. It was similar to the things commonly used in alchemy, so he poured black gunpowder into the bamboo. It's exactly the same as what Fengzi just did, except that the former used fire while the one Fengzi used just now was water. Sun Simiao nodded. That's right. This is something that happened in Cao Cao's hands. According to legend, Cao Cao didn't believe in these things, so he drove all the alchemists in the Wei Kingdom into a mess. Because they had lost their livelihood, they created this thing. But who would have thought that this thing would successfully attract Cao Cao's attention and bring about a fatal disaster? After Sun Simiao finished speaking, he looked at Zhang Feng and said, Old man, although I don't know where you learned this thing, it must have been passed down to you by your master, right? Since your master can use such miraculous medical skills, then this alchemy skill is naturally not a problem. Perhaps he can really refine immortality pills? Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped Sun Simiao. Elder son, what are you talking about? She had no choice but to interrupt him. If she allowed him to continue speaking like this, she would really be dead. It was fine to say these words here, but if it reached the ears of someone with ulterior motives, it would be fatal. His master, that was all fabricated. Not to mention now. Even in the 21st century, no one could achieve immortality. Want to create an immortality pill? Thinking too much. But the F**king monarchs of this era, he didn't know if their heads were cramped or what, but they were so obsessed with such ridiculous things. Qin Shi Huang believed in this, but in the end he was played to death by his own mercury. Emperor Wu of Han believed, in the end he poisoned himself. This kind of thing was common throughout history. Even though they knew that this thing was actually nonsense, there were still countless people and monarchs who advanced dauntlessly for this thing. What was this? This was the real horror. At this moment, Zhang Feng only wanted to end this topic as soon as possible. He didn't know if the appearance of this bomb would make those monarchs realize that this thing was actually a deadly thing. But at the very least, the appearance of this thing would temporarily solve Qiuzi's urgent problem. At this moment, Zhang Feng looked around and saw that everyone's eyes were burning with passion. He said, "Don't think too much. My master did mention this thing before, but he was right. In this era, from ancient times to even thousands of years later, no one could create this immortality pill because this thing originally didn't exist. It only existed in the imagination of some people. Many people thought that it could defy the heavens, but looking at history, who could really create the fruit of immortality? Immortality and alchemy were created by Junior Sister, but this gunpowder is also a very good thing. At the very least, I can maximize its effectiveness." When Li Shimin heard this, a hint of disappointment flashed in his eyes. He thought that Zhang Feng really had a way to create the immortality pill, but it wasn't important now. This matter could be discussed in the future. The main problem now was whether they could solve Qiuzi's problem in a short period of time before talking about other things. At this thought, Li Shimin stared into Zhang Feng's eyes and asked, "Fengzi, the matter of Qiuzi City is very important. Tell me, how long do you think it will take to create a bomb that can solve Qiuzi's problem? As long as you give me a time, I will definitely get the rest of the things for you in 3 days. If you want money, I will give you money. If you want something, I will give you something. Even if you want to kill someone, I will kill them for you." Chapter 1353. Ahem, Second Master, don't be impatient. Let's listen to Fengzi's plan first. After all, it's very important. At this moment, Wei Jing hurriedly said. Yu Shernan and the others also hurriedly tried to dissuade them. Even the old scholar wanted to interrupt their conversation several times, but he gave up when he saw Zhang Feng diverting the topic. But at this moment, when the fragrance of the fish wafted over, Zhang Feng instantly found an excuse. He rubbed his hands and said, "Are you all hungry? Let's go and eat fish. The fish in autumn is more delicious than any other time of the year. Let's talk while we eat." While speaking, Zhang Feng hurriedly opened the door without waiting for anyone to object. He shouted for people to move tables and stools, and asked people to bring in a large amount of wine. What could they say? The person in charge was unreliable. Li Shimin could only shake his head helplessly and follow Zhang Feng out of the villa. He also knew that he couldn't be too hasty. As soon as they stepped out of the door, they smelled the tempting fragrance in the air and couldn't help but sniff. Not far away by the waterfall, Cheng Chumo, Li Qingqian, and the others had been busy for a long time. Most importantly, they were also craving fish. However, this thing was not ready, and the emperor and the others hadn't come out yet, so they didn't dare to eat it. They could only wait until the emperor and the others sat down, then they could get some and go to the side to eat. By the time everyone arrived at the lakeside, Li Qingqian and the others had already placed all kinds of grilled fish on the table for Li Shimin and the others. Zhang Feng had also personally rolled up his sleeves and taught Zhang Yuyao how to make braised eel under her insistence. Li Shimin and the others each had a fish wrapped in white paper in front of them. It was on a red-hot tile, giving off a tempting fragrance. Looking at Zhang Feng's busy figure, the old scholar called out, "This brat, he didn't even tell me how to eat this. He's really reckless." Hearing this, Li Shimin shook his head slightly. "I'm afraid this kid is giving us a difficult problem." The old scholar's eyes flashed and he smiled without saying anything. Cheng Yaojin rubbed his hands anxiously and asked, "Second Master, what do you mean? Isn't this just a piece of paper? Can't you just tear it open?" Li Shimin shook his head and said, "If you compare this fish and this table to the current battle, then take a look." Cheng Yaojin was dumbfounded. The fish was still the same fish. How could he see the twists and turns in this? He looked at Yu Qigong and Yo Jinda. At this moment, the two of them were just as confused as he was. Only then did Qing Yaojin feel at ease and tear open the white paper wrapped around the fish. In an instant, the tempting fragrance that was so rich that it could not be dispersed made everyone unable to help but sniff again. Li Shimin pointed at the fish and the layer of paper and said, "This fish is equivalent to the current Tang Dynasty, and this paper is the garrison of Chiotzi City. Everyone is drooling when they see this fish, but because of this layer of paper, basically no one dares to tear it open for the time being. But in less than half a month, if there is really someone like you, old Qin, then, guess what will happen to the Tang Dynasty?" In an instant, not only Yu Shernan and the others were stunned. Even Qing Chumo and the others who were secretly putting the fish into Zhang Feng's villa were stunned. They looked at the fish in their hands, then at Zhang Feng and then at Li Shimin, not knowing what to do. This fish. How could they eat it? Li Shimin was right. At this time, in the eyes of others, the Tang Dynasty was like this paper-wrapped fish. Although they had not eaten it, the tempting taste was fatal. Not to mention the others, including those Turks who were covetously eyeing the Tang Dynasty at this time. At this time, let alone being full, as long as they were not hungry, it would be good enough. In addition, the food consumed by the garrison was incalculable. For them, staying here for one more day was a burden for one more day. How could they dare to stay here any longer? The dishes are here. At this time, Zhang Feng, old He's wife, and the other cooks in the kitchen served plates of delicious dishes, such as fish bubbles, eels, loaches, and so on. In an instant, no one had any thoughts of letting their imagination run wild. This thing was simply trying to kill people. Zhang Feng rubbed his hands and forced the two women to sit down. But as soon as the two women sat down, they hurriedly apologized and ran away with blushing faces. Zhang Feng could only sigh and ignore the two of them. He waved his chopsticks and said, "Come, come, come. Let's try this thing. It seems that we haven't sat so neatly together for a meal in a long time, right? Come on, let's eat. Everything can wait until after the meal. How about it?" Seeing this, Li Shimin was also tempted. He waved his hand with a smile and said, "Let's eat. We haven't had a good meal these days. It's rare that Fengzi is in such a good mood today. Let's not spoil his good mood. But before eating, Fengzi, I have a question to ask you first." Zhang Feng picked up a fish bubble, put it in his mouth and chewed it with a crunching sound. He asked, "What's the matter?" "It's about the dishes on this table." "Do you mean that the dishes on this table are like the Tang Dynasty now?" Zhang Feng was a little confused. He looked at Li Shimin suspiciously and finally touched his forehead and said, "Lao Li, you don't have a fever. Why are you talking nonsense now?" Chapter 1354. Li Shimin was speechless. "We are talking about serious business. Why do you only care about eating?" Li Shimin suddenly felt that he had already deviated from his expectations by coming here to ask about this matter. At the beginning he was looking for something to solve the Chiotzi crisis. Now, why did everything in Zhang Feng's place have something to do with eating? In this world only you, Zhang Feng, can be so heartless, right? Li Shimin said with a straight face, "This is not child's play." Compared with Li Shimin, the old Xiaocai and Yu Shernan felt more at ease. They even hoped that this matter would be as ridiculous as possible. It would be best if Zhang Feng said that this thing was a joke in the end. The more Zhang Feng acted like this, the more the emperor would feel the preciousness of this thing, as well as how terrifying it was. Naturally, the emperor would retreat. After all, this emperor was not simple. He was of Hu blood and was born to be warlike. However, in their knowledge, peace was the most important thing. These were two opposite ideas. Most importantly, the old Xiaocai could not bear to see Zhang Feng make such a cruel thing. At least, it was not made by Zhang Feng. It would make the future people think that the source of all this was Zhang Feng. The old Xiaocai thought of this and said, "Second master, why don't we talk about it after the meal? Perhaps Fengzi is thinking about something important now, and this meal is Fengzi's goodwill. After all, we have never eaten together before." The old Xiaocai's voice fell. Yu Shernan and the others nodded repeatedly. "Second master, brother Zihuai is right. Let's eat first. We can talk about it after the meal." Since Fengzi said it and second brother also said that it has something to do with eating, why don't we comprehend Fengzi's thoughts while eating? This is also very wonderful. Li Shimin thought for a while and looked at Zhang Feng, who was wolfing down the food. He was also speechless. He shook his head and said, "Then let's eat." About 2 hours later, they just ate, drank and had fun and did not mention anything about this thing. After the cups and plates were in a mess, Zhang Feng broke a bamboo tip and said while picking his teeth, let's go to my villa. Let's sit there, drink tea and chat. Won't it be fun? They had no choice but to follow Zhang Feng into the villa, including Ma Zhou and the others. Jing Shu and Meng Meng went out early. No one knew what they were going to do. It was as if they already knew that they would come here after dinner. When everyone saw that the two women were no longer around, they let go and lit up a cigarette each. In an instant, the entire spacious and bright living room suddenly became like a dream. Smoke lingered. At this time, Li Shimin asked, "Fengzi, can we talk about this now?" "Talk about what?" Zhang Feng burped and asked. But when he saw Li Shimin's expression, he slapped his head and said, "Hey, look at my memory. This meal is actually just a simple meal. There's no other meaning. Don't think too much about it. I just heard old Li say that there might be some other purpose behind this meal. To be honest, there isn't. Although we all know each other, we have never eaten together with so many people before. To put it bluntly, we have never eaten together like this before. Today is a rare occasion, so let's have a meal together to improve our friendship. As for what old Li said just now, if you think so, you can say so too. After all, our Tang Dynasty is now a delicious steamed bun in the eyes of others. Everyone wants to take a bite of it. But this is only for now. In the future, when our phosphate fertilizer and this season's wheat and corn harvest are harvested, it will not be a delicious steamed bun. At that time, I believe that even thousands of miles away Dashi country, which is as powerful as our Tang Dynasty and is even richer than our Tang Dynasty, will not be able to sit still. Hearing that, everyone's expression changed at the same time. Zhang Feng continued, "I know that Confucius, those sages, and the people in the world at this time, no one wants to go to war. What? People will die if they go to war. And the most important thing is that it will consume too much of our national strength. Our Tang Dynasty is now in a state of chaos. I have told Lao Li before that it is really not suitable for us to go to war now. After all, we have no food." But others don't think so. In their eyes, our Tang Dynasty is a delicious steamed bun. So what should we do? Let's beat them back first. As long as we can get through next year's harvest, when all the people have a full warehouse of food, our every military grain collection will not be as bad as it is now. Think about it. At that time, we will beat whoever we don't like in our Tang Dynasty. We will beat them until they are convinced and no longer dare to covet the riches of our Tang Dynasty. How good is that? Why do we have to fight for this momentary pleasure? Li Shimin's brows furrowed like fried dough twists. You can say that, but you can't do anything about it. You saw it yourself. We're not hitting others. We're protecting ourselves now. Do you mean that the bomb you mentioned is fake? Chapter 1355. At this time, Li Shimin's heart was also somewhat in a mess. He did not know which part of what Zhang Feng said was true and which was false. He was not sure what the purpose of the bomb was. But just now, after he fiddled with the firecrackers, he was able to make such a big hole. He really did not expect that the most inconspicuous thing could be so powerful. He did not expect it either. He had been looking forward to it for a long time, but this kid still did not seem to want to make it. What was he hesitating for? "Fengzi, is there something you are worried about? Or rather, what are you hesitating for? You can tell me. If I can help you solve it, I will not hesitate." Zhang Feng was indeed hesitating. After all, once this thing was made, what did it mean? It meant that the era of cold weapons was coming to an end. As long as one was an alchemist, one would be able to figure out the principle of this bomb after some time. He did not doubt the wisdom of the ancients. After all, how could the people who invented the four great inventions be stupid? Besides, this thing had been made for hundreds of years. He was just changing the style. Anyone could study it thoroughly. And this time it was used in Qiuzi because of an emergency. He had no choice. If there was really a way, Zhang Feng really wouldn't have brought this thing out. After all, once this thing was brought out, even more people would die in the war. This was not what he wanted to see. As for the objection of the old scholar and the others, it was also because of this reason. Zhang Feng did not answer Li Shimin's question. Instead, he looked at Ma Zhou and the others and asked, "Ma Zhou, you have followed me for so long. I want to ask you, what do you think is the most important thing in a war?" What was the most important thing? This time Ma Zhou and the others fell silent. They had also studied Zhang Feng's military books, written knowledge of the confrontation between two armies and sand table drills. During this period they had been studying mathematics, poetry and songs from early in the morning. They analyzed their meaning and studied the book of songs and so on. At night, Zhang Feng would teach them some more profound things such as physics and military science. At this time, after hearing Zhang Feng's question, Ma Zhou thought for a moment and bowed. "Teacher, I think that in a war the most important thing is the people. This answer made even Yu Qigong, Qing Yaojin and Yo Jindao frown slightly. But Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Continue. A military confrontation or a war between two sides, excluding all other factors, combined with what teacher is saying now, I think that the people are the most important thing. Take this bomb as an example. If it's used in the right hands to protect the country, then it's righteous. If it's used in an invasion, then it's unrighteous. These are all things that determine a person, a general, and an emperor's definition of this war. That is why I think that the people are the most important thing." Before he finished, Nyo Jinda and the other two asked, "Then, if we look at the current situation of the Tang dynasty and the surrounding situation, what do you think in this war, if our people not only defeated the Turks but also directly attacked their grassland, how do you think this is defined?" Ma Zhou's expression froze. He did not know what to say. Zhang Feng also looked at Hao Chujun and the others thoughtfully. "You guys also say something. Boldly say that this is not a test. This is just a chat." Seeing this, Hao Chujun and the others, as well as Qing Chumo and the others, began to speak freely. Li Shimin, Nyo Jinda, Yu Qigong, and the others were dumbfounded at this time. For this kind of military war, they had always resisted soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir. If you attacked Lao Tzu would destroy you. But why would they think so much? But at this time, what was this group of little guys talking about? Although they had doubts in their hearts, these little guys' words did make some sense. Even Yu Shernan and the others could not help but stroke their beards in praise at this time. Zhang Feng saw this and nodded. After everyone quieted down, he looked at Li Shimin and said, "Lao Li boy, do you understand why I don't want to get this thing out? This thing is actually a catalyst for ambition. If you have it, even if you defeat the enemy at this time, the enemy will come again. In addition, you have seen the principle of this thing. In fact, it is not complicated. If someone wants to make it, not to mention other things just now, you can make it out. What's more, alchemists are not only in the Tang dynasty. In other words, once we get this thing out today, in order to avoid future troubles, the emperor and the four gods of war of the Tang dynasty will continue to fight. This is ambition. If we don't fight, the enemy will inevitably learn this thing. Once they learn it, it will inevitably cause more serious damage to the Tang dynasty, the embryonic stage of the flourishing age that we are maintaining now. I'm afraid." At this point, Zhang Feng sighed and said, "It's not that I don't want to, but I can't bear to. As long as you can persuade Lord Zhang's son and the emperor, at least until the grain is harvested, you only need to intimidate them temporarily. Then I have nothing to say. I will certainly give you the manufacturing method in the shortest time. I won't touch this thing. If you want to make it, you do it. Or, you can give it to the emperor or something. You can make the decision. How about it? As for Ma Zhou, the development of this thing depends on you." Chapter 1356. Zhang Feng was not a bad person, but he was not a good person either. He just didn't want everything he cared about to go up in flames. He just wanted to live a peaceful life. But now, if the matter of Qiuzi was not dealt with, at least hundreds of thousands of people of the Tang dynasty would die, and the consequence would be the opening of the west gate of the Tang dynasty. At that time, not to mention living a peaceful life, even surviving would be a problem. Therefore, from the beginning of the matter, Zhang Feng did not plan whether this thing could be made or not. Instead, he directly threw it to Li Shimin. "Don't you want this thing?" In his opinion, this wasn't a source of income. Instead, it was a huge burden. Looking at the world, although arms dealers had made a lot of money in the past few thousand years, all the people despised them and even hated them. However, sometimes they also respected such people. However, Zhang Feng would rather not have such an honor. To put it bluntly, Zhang Feng was actually an ordinary person. He just wanted to live a peaceful life. Today he accidentally made this thing. He really did not want to make this thing so early. But because of the long-term war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks, and the current situation, he had to do it. But after all, he was only the dean of the academy. When he had nothing to do, he could act cool and pretend to be tough. But when such a thing fell on his shoulders, he really did not dare to take it. The most important point was, back then, when the plan to deal with the Turks and Tibetans had been set in stone, all of this had already been decided. The reason why Zhang Feng had asked Ma Zhou and the others was because even he himself was unable to determine whether his actions were right or wrong. At this time, Zhang Feng's answer was undoubtedly the most convincing to Yu Shernan and the others. Then, Yu Shernan and the others asked Li Shimin to go down the mountain with the excuse that they had something important to discuss with Zhang Feng. In fact, they were afraid that Li Shimin was urging Zhang Feng. And Li Shimin did not care. After all, this matter was too big. He had to go back and have a good discussion. Otherwise, if this thing was leaked, it would be more serious and fatal than anything else. Of course, Zhang Feng would not object to this matter. But when leaving, Li Shimin still asked dizzily, "Fengzi, are you sure the phosphorus fertilizer can really double the income of all the farmers?" Zhang Feng thought for a while and did not know how to answer. After all, from what he knew, Lao Li seemed to be the one who planted the most herbs, right? After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng said, "Actually, if you really use this thing for the herbs you plant, I don't know if it will increase the income, but it will definitely be much higher than other herbs. But for the farmers, any farmer can double their income. I can use my head to guarantee this." At this time, Li Shimin's heart finally calmed down. Originally, he wanted to ask Zhang Feng if he knew about Kong Yingda's matter, but after thinking about it, Li Shimin gave up. In his view, this matter had already been suppressed by Sun Simiao, so he did not care. Moreover, the most important thing now was to study the power of this gunpowder. Although Zhang Feng had already given him the formula, he still needed to verify it. As for what kind of consequences this thing could cause, whether it could allow 100,000 soldiers to resist at least 300,000 soldiers, it was a matter of whether or not. Li Shimin had just returned to the imperial palace. However, he did not notice that on the way to Shao Mountain, there were more pedestrians than usual, especially on the road to Shao Mountain. However, what he did not notice was that these people were all heading towards Shao Mountain. Near the Golden Light Gate at the West Market entrance of Chang and City, there was a mansion that occupied at least 3 times the area of other people. The area was not much smaller than Zhang Feng's mansion. It was called Tang Mansion. In front of a gloomy young man stood at least 100 local ruffians and a group of women. Needless to say, those ruffians all had sharp mouths and monkey cheeks, and their eyes were rolling around. However, those women were all fat and chubby, and their mouths never stopped chattering. At this time, the young man coughed slightly and said, "Are you all done?" In an instant, everyone's expression changed and they hurriedly shut their mouths. After everyone quieted down, an old man supported by 2 young maidservants slowly walked out from the door behind the young man. The old man coughed and said, "Everyone, you all saw it. The dean of White Deer College used some unknown method to actually use that poisonous thing on the grain. I don't even know what method he used, but he actually made Dr. Sun side with him. What is this? He wants to wipe out the common people in one fell swoop. Look at Tong Huifong. How many people are planting crops now? They are all hiding in the mountains waiting to watch a good show. Look at us again. What are we? We are people who depend on the grain to live. Have you seen a place that can produce more than 5 dan of grain per mu? 5 dan can only be harvested when the weather is good. If the weather is bad, forget 5 dan, even 1 or 2 dan would be a blessing from the heavens. Can we tolerate such wild ambitions? We can't." In an instant, those ruffians and women all shouted angrily. Seeing this, the old man raised his trembling hand and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go to Shao Mountain and settle accounts with him." Chapter 1357. The Tang Family. Originally, in the previous dynasty and the Northern Zhou dynasty, they were also a famous family in the Guangzhong area. Originally, their ancestors had been officials in the court in the Sui dynasty and the Northern Zhou dynasty. After Li Yuan founded the country, their life was very miserable. But it was not until Li Shimin ascended the throne that they became a little better. But this was only one aspect. They only recovered some of their land. As for business, they had just started, but they encountered the cooperative and the construction of the Shao Mountain market. With this, the little bit of trade that they had just recovered suffered a serious blow again. Originally, they could still rely on the paper mill to support them. But since Zhang Feng's paper mill came out, their business directly disappeared. It should be known that from textiles, porcelain, and paper, these 3 were the main economic pillars that the Tang family could support. But this time, the most important paper mill was cut off. How could the Tang family not be angry? However, Zhang Feng was inextricably linked to the court. Moreover, this guy was a viscount, a hereditary viscount. Usually they really did not dare to do anything to him. But this time was different. As an old-school power in Chang, the Tang family naturally had a lot of land and property. At this time, although it had passed through the hands of Li Yuan and Li Shimin, they still had over 1,000 mu of land and property, all of which had been left behind by their ancestors. But this damned bastard Dan had actually cut off their paper-making business, and now he was actually cutting off their source of income. How could this not make these people who relied on these fields to make a fortune angry? Most of their food and land came from tenants and rented out. If it was really as Sun Simiao and Kong Yingda said. At that time, food would become the most worthless thing in the world. Although there were more. But there were more people. Who could they sell the food to at that time? This was the existence that made them angry the most. Therefore, all the old-school forces in Guangzhou had joined forces in the past 2 days in order to use these people's sea tactics to build momentum in Shao Mountain. If Zhang Feng was tactful and could pass this phosphate fertilizer to them, especially that kind of technology, then it would be fine. But if not, this was a big plan. On the night that Kong Yingda personally went to Shao Mountain to bring back the news they were discussing. After all, the poor people should not have this thing. Once this thing was in their hands, how could they, who relied on the land passed down by their ancestors, live? Moreover, they also learned from the people who went to school on the mountain and worked on the mountain that Zhang Feng also made something else that could improve the quality of seeds. How could they not be moved? Which poor people deserved to have this thing? They did not. Therefore, on one hand they were advocating that this thing was poisonous fertilizer, and it was something that Zhang Feng wanted to harm them. Their purpose? It was because they knew that Zhang Feng was easy to talk to. Whenever he encountered something troublesome, he would lose his cool. He would give you whatever you wanted. This was the biggest thing they were relying on this time. What's the matter? Didn't Kong Yingda spread this thing? This is what he said. If you have the ability, go and find him. Sun Simiao doctor? Wasn't this bullshit? With their status, how could they invite Dr. Sun? Wasn't that a joke? Therefore, this was the biggest thing they were relying on. While the Tang family was making their move, the rest of the big families were also making their moves. The leader of Tang Jia's team this time was Tang Haotian, the young master of the Tang family who had just married the only daughter of Minister Zhou of the Honglu Temple. Although he married into the family and was less than 20 years old, he was already a 5th-grade official. What kind of glory was this for the Tang family? With him taking action, even if the people in the military camp tried to stop them outside, as long as they had a good reason, those soldiers could not do anything to them. Besides, no one said that they were not allowed to do business in the market square on the mountain. In the end, the mighty crowd still alarmed Niu Jinda, who was resting in the military camp. Niu Jinda should have gone to the mountain long ago, but because of his health and the military affairs at this time, he just came back from the palace. He planned to make some arrangements in the military camp, and the most important thing was to send Zhang Feng's military training equipment to Chiotzi City immediately. On the other hand, it was also to supervise the production of the pure steel ballista and crossbow machine at this time. After all, these things were basically under the jurisdiction of the Chang and military seal now. This place was quite safe and close to the mountain, so it saved him the disadvantage of going back and forth. In addition, this was the only way to get to Shao Mountain, so he could not make any military movements during this period of time. After all, he had just received a secret letter from the emperor that some big families in the Guangzhou seemed to be a little dishonest. But at this time, a loud and urgent voice rang out from outside the tent. Report. Niu Jinda did not take it seriously. He changed his robe and calmly asked the person to come in. What's the matter? General, just now the guard stationed in Mount Shao said that the people of the Honglu Temple are taking a large number of people up the mountain. The Honglu Temple? Niu Jinda was stunned. What are they doing here? I'm not sure, but it seems that an important envoy from the palace is coming recently, so the Honglu Temple sent people up the mountain to buy some things. Niu Jinda heard this and said angrily, do you need to report such a small matter? Hearing this, the soldier gave a new military salute and said, General, they brought at least a few hundred people. We can't stop them, so we let them in. That's why we came to report. What did you say? How many people? At this time, Niu Jinda also realized that something was wrong. Seeing this, the soldier trembled and said in a trembling voice, About 300 to 500 people. Hearing this, Niu Jinda's face suddenly changed. Men, gather everyone in the tent and quickly surround the market square. Don't let anyone go. Chapter 1358. If he hadn't heard the emperor's secret report in the palace, he wouldn't have taken it seriously. But he had heard about it in the palace, and he had just received another secret letter from the emperor. What did this mean? The Tang residents, the Bai residents, the Mi residents, the Gao residents. These people were all old in Guangzhou. These families had been in Guangzhou for hundreds of years. Although they were a little lonely, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. The emperor had told him to pay more attention. In other words, these dishonest fellows were about to make a move. However, he received this news at this moment. How could he not be furious? If he still couldn't think of something at this time, he wouldn't be worthy of being called a war god. However, at that moment, Yu Qigong called out to him from within the tent. Wait. Go out and wait for a moment. After sending the soldier away, Yu Qigong frowned and said, Old Niu, this isn't right. Think about it. Lord Zhou of the Chamberlain of Dependencies has always been dutiful, and he should know something. But for him to jump out at this time, isn't it a little unreasonable? Niu Jinda, who was already irritable, immediately paled. So you're saying that this matter might not have been done by someone from the Chamberlain of Dependencies? No. Yu Qigong muttered to himself, then called in the soldier again and asked, "Let me ask you, what is the age and appearance of the leader?" The soldier replied, in reply to the general, "That person is only about 20 years old." "That's right." Yu Qigong said, "Old Niu, do you still remember the wedding of Lord Zhou of the Chamberlain of Dependencies a few days ago?" Of course Niu Jinda knew this. Everyone in the court knew, and it had happened at this time. With this thought, Niu Jinda asked in surprise, "Could it be that the leader is Lord Zhou's son-in-law?" "Very likely. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to get his hands on a document from the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Furthermore, there are only 2 or 3 people over the age of 20 in the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Only someone very close to Lord Zhou would be able to get his hands on a document. Moreover, Lord Zhou's son-in-law is the 3rd young master of the Tang family. Can you think of anything now? The Tang family. As expected, it was the Tang family. Niu Jinda's expression suddenly changed. Just as he was about to rush out, Yu Qigong held him back. "Don't be impulsive. Let me finish." Niu Jinda glared at him. "Look at the situation now. If we continue talking, there will definitely be chaos at the foot of the mountain." Yu Qigong's expression was solemn as well. "That's for sure. However, no matter how chaotic it is at the foot of the mountain, it's fine as long as it's safe on the mountain. Hurry up and go up the mountain. Follow Feng Zi. As long as nothing happens to Feng Zi, I'll take care of the matters at the foot of the mountain." Hearing this, Niu Jinda slapped his head and said, "All right, I'll go then." While speaking, Niu Jinda had already rushed out. Only then did Yu Qigong begin to gather his troops. On the other side, the market square at the foot of Shao Mountain basically had an industry in Chang'an City. The market square of Shao Mountain basically followed the style of Chang'an City, but it was different from Chang'an. The market square here was divided into a main street. On this street, no one was allowed to set up stalls, mainly because of image issues. On both sides of the main street, there were 2 auxiliary streets. On the auxiliary streets was the original appearance of the market square of Shao Mountain. It was even livelier than the 2 markets in Chang'an City combined. After all, White Deer College's reputation was there for all to see. Moreover, there was no curfew here. Basically, there were still people doing business at night. After all, the workers and students on the mountain only had time at night. Today, everyone was doing business as usual. However, at this moment, hundreds of people suddenly rushed in from outside. For the market square of Shao Mountain, this was nothing unusual. The only unusual thing was that after these people rushed into the market square, they instantly disappeared without a trace like fish in the sea. After that, the whole market square was suddenly filled with very bad rumors and slanders. Let me tell you, there's something going on the mountain right now. Do you know? What? You don't know? It's spread all over Chang'an City. Look, didn't a group of half-dead people come to the mountain some time ago? But how many of them did you see come down the mountain alive? You don't know? How long have you been on the mountain? You don't know? Let me tell you. The things that those people brought back are poisonous. Didn't you see some people coming down the mountain and those doctors in Chang'an City wearing those white things called masks? Yes. Now you remember, right? Let me tell you. Hurry up and run. Didn't the miracle doctor, Sun Simiao, come down the mountain yesterday? Do you know what the miracle doctor did? He went to ask for help. He said that the guy named Zhang Feng on the mountain wanted to harm people. He made that kind of poison into something called phosphate fertilizer. He said that if it was used in the fields of the Zhuang family, it would increase the yield. Think about it. That thing can poison people to death. Even the miracle doctor can't do anything about it. Do you think the food grown from that thing can be eaten? The dean of this college is evil. He wants the lives of all the lowly people. Maybe the pork you eat now is also poisonous. Haven't you seen pork before? How did such a coquettish thing change its taste in their hands? Chapter 1359. More and more of these people were appearing. The people at the foot of the mountain did not believe it. But there were too many of them. These people did not do anything and seemed to be familiar with the market. They knew which businesses belonged to White Deer College and which businesses belonged to Tonghui Lane. They all avoided these people and then specifically chose places with a lot of people and began to spread rumors. In the beginning, these people were still restrained, but slowly these ruffians and women returned to their original nature. As long as you dared to say that you didn't believe them, they would instantly surround you. If you still didn't believe them or dared to talk back, they would come up and beat you up. Slowly, the incident here alerted the patrolling guards. However, before the bailiffs arrived, this group of people dispersed and disappeared without a trace. However, once the bailiffs left, they would madly seek revenge on those who had sought out the bailiffs. In an instant, the whole market was shrouded in a dark cloud. At this moment, Cripple Wang had a rare day of rest. He had planned to buy some useful toys in the market and bring them back for his newly married daughter to play with. But when he was squatting in front of a merchant's stall, at least 3 women suddenly appeared and surrounded Cripple Wang. "Yo brother, look at you. Are you buying toys for your daughter?" Cripple Wang did not take it seriously, but he still excitedly introduced his daughter to the woman. At this moment, when the woman knew that Cripple Wang was doing manual labor on the mountain, she immediately became interested. "Brother, are you from Tonghui Lane?" Cripple Wang shook his head. "How could I be so lucky? It's not like that." After confirming Cripple Wang's identity, the 3 women's interest was piqued. "Brother, do you know what that bastard Zhang Feng is doing on the mountain?" When Cripple Wang heard this, his face instantly changed. "What did you say?" He hated it when people badmouthed Zhang Feng. But the person who badmouthed Zhang Feng was a woman, so he could not do anything. If it was a man, he would have punched him. "How dare you badmouth me? You're courting death." But Uncle Ho's face changed. Another woman pushed Cripple Wang and sobbed, "Oh, to tell you the truth, my husband was killed by that goddamn Zhang Feng on the mountain. But when you got home, you didn't dare to say a single word. Do you know why? Me, my daughter, and the baby are all being watched. If my man dares to say no, we'll lose our lives." "You shrew, shut up, Lao Tzu." How could Cripple Wang listen to this? He suddenly scolded. It instantly attracted countless people. Seeing this, the woman rolled her eyes and immediately squatted on the ground to make a scene. "That goddamn Zhang Feng, he's made my man so miserable. You forced my man to take poison and you also want me to not tell anyone about it? Once I tell anyone, you'll destroy my entire family. Woo woo woo, how dare you?" Cripple Wang was furious. But he was just about to step forward and beat him up. However, he was instantly surrounded by a group of people. Cripple Wang was stunned. But the 3 women pointed at Cripple Wang and pinched him. In an instant, Cripple Wang's face was bruised and bruised. At this moment, the woman who was squatting on the ground and crying said, "Brother, I know you're suffering. Look, we're all victims of that scoundrel. Yesterday, Lord Kong Yingda came to find us and stood up for us. That's why we dared to go up the mountain. If you're being oppressed, tell us. Let everyone know what kind of person that goddamn Zhang Feng is." "That's right, brother. This is your only way out now. This is also an opportunity. Think about it, Lord Kong is a 3rd-rank official and a virtuous official of the dynasty. Even the emperor respects." Bam! Cripple Wang finally could not take it anymore. While the people who caught him were not paying attention, he forcibly broke free and punched the woman in the face. In an instant, the woman fainted with blood gushing out of her face. This time the people who trapped him were furious. "Wow, this old man is actually that goddamn Zhang Feng's informant." Men beat him to death. At this moment, those merchants, barbarian merchants, and those who were buying were all dumbfounded. No one knew if this was true or not. But they knew that these people seemed to be from an organization, and it was not an ordinary organization. In addition, they were talking about Kong Yingda just now. Could it be that all of this was his idea? This time, those who were afraid were terrified. And those who were not were beaten up. The entire market was in chaos at this moment. After all, Cripple Wang came from a military background. How could these hooligans be compared to him? Although his legs were indeed crippled, he still had some tricks up his sleeves. Although this group of people was very fierce, they did not dare to kill. This allowed Cripple Wang to seize the opportunity to escape from the battle.